What is up, everybody? I am NerdSlayer, and welcome to the 6 Pixels Under podcast. I'm doing this on the fly. There's no redos, so we'll be learning this as we go. And hopefully we can make the first pilot episode as exciting for you guys as it is for me. Because it's been a long time coming. We promised to do a podcast. I mean, in chat, they could probably correct me, but it's at least been 3 months, 4 months, maybe more than that. I don't know. At this point, I've lost track, but it's been a while, a long time coming. But finally, I've got the right logo, I've got the right name, I've got the right artwork, and I've got the right ideas. So we're hoping that we can make this a regular watch for you guys weekly. So every week, it's going to air at 12 p.m. Eastern, which is right now. And I think that's 7 p.m. Eastern, or C Eastern in Europe, which is UTC +2 or something like that. I'm still learning my European time zones. But yeah, so the podcast, 6 Pixels Under, it's going to be about gaming. But of course, as you guys realize with my content, it's going to focus more so on MMOs. And I mean MMOs in just kind of the broad sense of, that's my dog greeting me for the day. MMOs in the broad sense of multiplayer games, as well as MMO RPGs or MMO FPSs or RTSs or anything of that sort. So yeah, we're going to focus on MMOs, of course, as you guys would expect from me and my channel. But we're also going to cover current gaming news as well. So if things come up that are relevant that maybe aren't necessarily about MMOs, don't be alarmed. We're just talking about gaming here. So yeah, ultimately, we'll talk about MMOs, but we're going to talk about just about anything gaming. And then I guess I can walk you guys through kind of like the structure. Do I live in Europe? No, I live in America, actually. So I'll show you guys kind of the structure. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so here's the structure up here. The way the podcast is going to work, sorry, let me wait for my dog to stop barking. I think it's construction or something. But anyway, so the podcast will start off as an introduction. If I have a guest, there will be a segment where we talk to the guest. That's going to run about 30. You see these little time guesses? These are just like soft dates. It's not going to be super hard. Like, again, I don't want everything to be overly structured. I just want it to be structured enough. And I don't like the podcasts that are just so unprofessional. It reminds me of that UN person who had like their kid like falling into the door or whatever. That was a really funny meme. But yeah, so we want to have enough structure to where it's not just me rambling for 2 or 3 hours, which I know that works for some people's podcasts, but frankly, a lot of the gaming podcasts that I watch, I just can't watch them. There's just zero structure, and it just seems like everyone's just kind of doing whatever. But anyway, after the guest part, if I do have a guest, we're going to discuss the current gaming topics. Then we're going to talk about the counterpoint, which is playing devil's advocate to a prominent gaming issue. Then we're going to talk about MMOs on the go is just like a smaller, kind of more contained segment of talking about massive multiplayer online games as a whole. It'll be little bits of information. For example, for this week, New World has released a bunch of information. We have other games coming into beta, that sort of thing. Ashes of Creation is showing off gameplay. That's the type of stuff we would talk about there. Pitch Your Game. I think that's just going to be a revolving segment where we'll just put whatever in there. Maybe we'll say make a meme or pitch your game. Things that whenever we're done doing that segment and maybe by the next week starts, we can choose the winner of, and the winner of that contest will get a mug. And every week we're going to have a different theme. And this week is psychological thrillers. So if you guys want to get some practice in now or start thinking of your idea now, like I said, the winner will get a mug. Psychological thrillers is the theme for this week. I'm curious to see what you guys will come up with. And one thing I should say about Pitch Your Game is that I don't want you guys to go any more than like 300 words. Like it should, like let's look up how much 300 words looks like. They said how much of it? It's 2/3 of a page. Even that's too much. Let's do 250. Let's do 250. Oh, someone could clip that and see what the next game or what the next videos are. We're definitely doing this on the go. But yeah, about 250 words. Like, don't put too much time into these, but just have fun. That's what the purpose of that is. And then we're gonna do the From the Vault section, which is we're just gonna pick an old school game and talk about it and why it was significant, why it was cool, and things of that nature. Soapbox time is just going to be talking about any subject, but it's also going to be typically related to gaming in some kind of way. I won't get, like, for example, too political or anything of that sort, but if it comes up, it's going to come up. Soapbox time is really just the time for me to rant about things about gaming, really. At the moment, that's what I'm thinking about it as. And then, of course, we have the call-in or the hot take segment at the end, which is where I want everyone from Twitter, from Twitch, from YouTube, from Discord to just send me their hot takes. Maybe you think Witcher 3 is a bad game, for example, or whatever it is. We can go back to full screen now. Anyway, so to start you guys off, this week in particular, we're going to talk about a lot of good news in gaming and a lot of bad news in gaming. For example, Carbine Studios is shutting down, unfortunately, as well as their massive multiplayer online game WildStar. We will also talk about CCP getting bought by the creators of Black Desert Online, Pearl Abyss, and what that means, if it means anything. And finally, we will talk about the news of a new Lord of the Rings MMO and much, much more. So let's get started already. Transition now. Okay, so for the topics today, as we just mentioned, the first one that I want to start with is Carbine Studios and WildStar shutting down. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the article on screen and show you guys. So yeah, NCSoft right here says that refunds will be issued for in-game purchases going back to July 1st. They just do that really just to get some positive... I guess some positive press out of this whole thing, because overall it's going to be relatively negative. But let's just talk about it. I mean, let's be honest. I made a Death of a Game video on WildStar because I really didn't see them making it out of the year, to be honest. I picked on WildStar. You know, some people might have said, well, it wasn't technically dead yet. The thing about WildStar, the reason why you can see the writing on the wall when it comes to this sort of thing is typically that when it comes to the way a game makes money, the way an MMO makes money in a big company like NCSoft, they typically are given their own kind of section in the financials of that company. Well, after a certain point, the company no longer wants to show that said game as an individual source of revenue for a couple of reasons. One is that the game isn't making enough money, so it actually looks bad for them to showcase that on their financials specifically. It also could affect their stockholders and that sort of thing. So what you start to see once a game starts to fail and it's kind of getting shoved out is that they'll relegate the game to the other section of its financials. And that's what you saw with WildStar. WildStar was relegated to the other section. So it already had all the signs to me that it wasn't going to last, not to mention that the developers, Carbine Studios, literally admitted that they wouldn't be implementing new content zones, which kind of seemed like a big selling point of WildStar. The whole idea of being able to explore with your different subclasses and such. So it was like the writing was there. In terms of Carbine Studios being shut down, I'm not the least bit surprised by that. I think I maybe should think about turning these off, but maybe I should leave them on. What do you guys think? Should I leave my... thank you for following, by the way. But I don't know if I should leave those on. We're really learning as we go, huh? But Carbine Studios, at the end of the day, I'm not surprised that they also were shut down, because we knew that as of last year, there were rumors that Carbine Studios was working on another unannounced MMO. But the fact of the matter is that Carbine Studios probably worked on many different ideas. That's usually when the developer is about to be given its kind of like death kiss by the publisher. The publisher comes to you, is basically like, look, in this case, WildStar's not working. WildStar's not working, Carbine. We need you to come up with something else. Prove to us that maybe you could do a better idea, or you can pivot to doing another MMO in this case. And Carbine probably tried, and ultimately, as the article states, they weren't successful. and they couldn't convince NCSoft to trust them again, which I don't completely blame NCSoft for not wanting to trust them. That's the thing, is that we have to kind of talk about failure in a more measured sense, because people like to talk about things failing all the time, but you have to realize that there's multiple ways that something could fail, right? Something could fail like artistically. Maybe it doesn't get the same vision that was once promised. I look at games like Guild Wars 2, for example. As popular and famous as that game is, I think conceptually, vision-wise, from what they promised the game to be, they've changed and pivoted on their ideas a lot. But not to get to the other NCSoft game. That's a whole another hornet's nest. But in the case of Carbine, with WildStar in itself, they wanted to do something kind of different and unique, and they ended up just sort of making a worse Guild Wars 2 to some extent, in a lot of ways. Like, even if you look at the action combat. So it's sad, but going back to what I was saying about failure, WildStar was a massive business failure. So it was a monetary failure. They spent about 6-7 years developing this game, put who knows how many millions and dozens of millions of dollars into the game, and then once it launched, they essentially had to make it free to play in just a single year. So it's just kind of like, it sucks, but at the end of the day, something that's that big of a failure in terms of the monetization and money and business and the more corporate greed kind of stuff, that means that game is more likely to fail a lot sooner. And so that you might ask the question of, well, why is SWTOR still alive? And that's because SWTOR was able to transition much easier to a free-to-play model, but also had far less like base issues than WildStar did. So it's sad to see Carbine leave, to see WildStar being shut down, but it ultimately isn't that surprising. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not sad. So we got that out of the way. Now, there is going to be a new Lord of the Rings MMO. And that's a bit, I don't know how to feel about that one. So the article from Massively OP, by the way, which I enjoy the website. Apparently, if I remember correctly, and by the way, I don't review these topics or anything. I literally just put them down, and I want to talk about them kind of on the fly with you guys. So this is actually like a fully done article. This is not the one that I was looking for. I was just looking for the announcement. Oh, here it is. That's probably a good article, though. All right, so I can actually read you guys the story itself. Online sports game maker Athlon Games announced this week that it partnered up with Middle-earth Enterprises to develop and sorry, making myself big again. I need to remember what my keys are, or maybe get a Stream Deck. But they are partnering up with Middle-earth Enterprises, which I believe is the shareholders group that now owns the Tolkien estate. If you guys are wondering who that is, because Christopher Tolkien, who used to have the rights of obviously his father's work, I think he relinquished it. And I don't even want to get into that discussion because that's a whole nother discussion in itself. But it's, I'm assuming it was this. Anyway, they're going to be developing and publishing a free-to-play massive multiplayer online video game set in the Lord of the Rings universe. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Obviously, there's like next to no details about this. All we know is that it will be a prequel, apparently, to the Lord of the Rings novels, which, again, that could mean literally anything. It just means that in terms of a timeline, it's going to be before, which is actually where the Lord of the Rings online MMO, which is, LOTRO, is currently running. It's operating in that, book/movie phase of lore. So they obviously have to make it before or after, and it probably makes more sense for them to do before, because then all evil theoretically wouldn't be vanquished yet in terms of the ring and the Nazguls and etc., etc. Now, apparently this Athlon Games is a publishing brand created by some other Asian company who has ties to Warframe. Leiyu Technologies, I think is what they're called. There's some type of investment group. Apparently people are saying this Athlon Games is like an Asian developer that has worked with Warframe before, if that's what I remember, that also makes like sports games. So I have no clue how any of this happened, but usually the way you get a publisher or a let's say in this case Middle Earth Enterprises, which is like Games Workshop, you have to go to them, show them an idea, and be like, there's money here. You have to be able to convince them that there's money here, and they're going to be interested in doing such a thing. So in this case, this holding group is going to actually publish a game. So I'm not understanding this. That's so strange. Like, when does Games Workshop, for example, publish games? I don't think they typically do. So we need to wait until there's more details to really know more. But we can talk a lot about a little bit of the, I guess, more interesting bits, which I think the big one is obviously going to be that the game is free to play. And before that gets everybody kind of afraid, usually when people see Asian developers come in with a free to play model, everyone kind of immediately gets like their guard up. They're afraid that that's somehow going to mean that the game is going to be monetized unfairly or is not going to be the right business model. Free to play, as much as it gets its benefits monetary wise and amount of players, because it's obviously a very, very successful business model, it obviously has a lot of negative connotations with it too, because people hear free to play and they're like, when they hear that something is free, first off, that in itself as a consumer makes you feel weird. You're like, why is this free? It must be not that good. But the other thing is that we have so much experience with different companies monetizing in such annoying and terrible ways when it comes to free-to-play MMOs that, of course, we're going to naturally be afraid of them making the Lord of the Rings MMO a free-to-play game. I just started my music, by the way. Don't be alarmed. But I just wanted to play some music. So yeah, there's really nothing else we can talk about in regards to it. I mean, I'm hopeful, just as a Lord of the Rings fan in general of the lore, and also obviously a fan of MMOs in general. I can't really have the same faith in another company wanting to make another Lord of the Rings MMO, especially when we have basically no track record behind this company. That's the scary thing to me. Middle Earth Enterprises decided, hey, we're gonna let this game developer who basically has no MMO experience release a massively, AAA. It's a AAA MMO at that point, right? When you're getting involved with like the actual shareholder of the rights of the game. We're talking like AAA. And you're gonna trust in a developer that's not exactly proven. I don't think that's necessarily bad in itself. I mean, we've had companies that have virtually come out of nowhere and made great products, especially MMOs. In fact, some of our most famous MMOs were created by companies we have never heard of at the time. I mean, not counting, obviously, Blizzard. But yeah, we'll see what happens with more of that. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Free-to-play can be a good way to get enough people to try games as having a healthy population. So exactly, and that's the main thing about free-to-play games that you guys shouldn't be discouraged about, is that if an MMORPG doesn't have enough players after the first couple of months, which by the way is vast majority of MMOs because of the way the market and people play those games, if they immediately get the in-game content done in a few months, they're likely not going to play and will never come back to the game. At least a good portion of them. I would probably wager, if I remember correctly, they say that MMORPGs after the first 3 months are supposed to lose like 70% of their population on average, or is it 50? I can't remember. It's somewhere in that range from 2/4 to 3/4 of their population. And that's just like the regular drop-off. But the problem is if your game makes too big of a drop-off and then can never quite recover its old population, especially if it's an open, expansive type of game and maybe not the more kind of contained theme park kind of game, it literally can't come back. It's too hard for it to come back because it needs a certain amount of players in order to work on a core level. Now, we have no idea of what kind of game the Lord of the Rings MMO is or is going to be. The new one, sorry, not Lord of the Rings Online currently, but this new Lord of the Rings, the prequel Lord of the Rings. We don't even know if they're going to what type of combat are they going to use, action combat. We have no clue. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll leave it at that, and then we can move on to the next topic. Okay, so the big one, the one that I'm sure many people wanted to get to, is EVE Online Studio, CCP, acquired by Pearl Abyss. South Korean developer behind Black Desert Online spends $425 million on CCP. Now, this is crazy, right? Like, Some people were like legit telling me, I think that's a typo, man. I think that $425 million is a typo. It's not a typo, man. That's a real number, and only a South Korean like MMO studio would throw around that kind of money, I feel like, in regards to acquiring other MMOs, or in this case, another studio. But this makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. I'll start from like the very beginning. So this is not the first time a Korean developer or a Korean publisher has purchased a large company in America or in Europe in this case. This is not the first time this has happened. This happened actually way back when with NCSoft. Richard Garriott used to run their, the Western division. That was back when they were trying to do Lineage in the West, and they were working on Guild Wars and WildStar and Guild Wars 1 even back then. So this is not the first time a big Asian company has decided to come to America or come to Europe and purchase another studio so they can kind of have a studio that also services another audience. This is not the first time it's happened. So this has happened before. There's a precedent for this. So don't be just totally alarmed and think that this is totally out of the ordinary. It isn't. Not to mention that people, they say this, and I know, look, you have to take these words with a grain of salt. Every time something happens in regards to someone gets purchased, someone gets bought, people get merged, companies get merged. I'm sure if any of you guys have ever been through this in your real life, you've heard the words, it's all gonna function. What's that phrase people like to use? Business as usual. People love to say business as usual. And in this article, it says, CCP will continue to operate independently, retaining its 250 employees across its flagship studio in Iceland. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that city name. Plus offices in London and Shanghai. I didn't even know they had offices in London and Shanghai. Well, I knew London, but not Shanghai. That's interesting. But anyway, they say that they're going to operate independently, which I want you guys to understand. At this point, there's no such thing as independently. When you have a company to answer to, when you have a boss in any fashion, and in this case, you have a boss in a South Korean company who knows how to monetize and knows how much money MMOs can make, there's just no possible conceivable way that it's business as usual. I cannot possibly believe this. Now, that being said, people will typically point out another comparison company in Tencent, which owns League of Legends, which owns... They own a lot of Epic. I think 44% of Epic games. So Fortnite and all of that stuff. They own, of course, all of their Asian titles like Combat Arms and such. But Tencent has done this for a while as well, which is like Tencent will buy out companies and then kind of let them function on their own, but obviously give them sort of like a direction behind the scenes. We're never going to know what Pearl Abyss has planned for CCP. Behind closed doors, we have no idea. We know it's obviously going to be different expectations. I think there's literally no way that Pearl Abyss pays $425 million for a company and then says business as usual. If you just think about it from a business perspective, that's as likely as me wanting to, buy a company myself and not interject myself into their daily workings and try and better the company. Like, say for example, if I got hired by some developer to help them run their MMO, like there's no way that somebody could say that, oh, it's going to be business as usual, because I'm a person who's going to immediately try and change things, right? Like, because that's just what you do when you spend a certain amount of money or you get hired somewhere and your whole purpose is to try and improve something. So in this case, it's with Pearl Abyss has a financial and a monetary bonus to wanting CCP to succeed. And CCP, I think, as far as I know, has their own bonus tied in with this. Apparently, if they make a certain amount of money, they get bonus or whatever else. I'm not entirely sure the specifics, but that's roughly what I've heard. Point being is that there's just basically no way that Pearl Abyss buys CCP and expects no changes. Nothing is going to... business as usual, right? It's just not going to happen. So I'm not trying to say get afraid, EVE Online fans. Don't get so angry at me. I'm not trying to say that bad things will happen. I'm just saying that things will happen. Change is going to happen, right? And whether or not it's bad or good, that's up for your own speculation. I'm not necessarily going to make that speculation. But what I will say is that this totally makes sense because CCP, I think personally for some time, and people I've talked to in the EVE audience who are insiders in that audience have also told me after the sell that we both agree that we think that this has been happening for some time. We think CCP has been shopping around. CCP, unfortunately, has had a lot of failures and successes. Of course, we have to talk about EVE Online. It's a great success, especially for the hardcore MMO audience, especially for the hardcore PvP MMO audience, which, I mean, let's be honest, EVE Online is like our golden boy. It's the MMO that we can mention when we talk about PvP MMOs being able to work. But that being said, I can't see a world in which CCP hasn't already been trying to sell themselves. I think that they've been shopping around for the past 1, maybe even 2 years at this point. And I'm not even exaggerating. I really think that. That's my speculation. I think they've been shopping for a long time because CCP has made some big mistakes with VR. They put a lot of money into VR. They created entire studios that they had to shut down. I mean, that was not good, right? They apparently it even says it in the article. They pulled out of VR space and closed their Newcastle studio behind EVE Valkyrie. So this is something they've made these failures before. They had Dust 514 that didn't do so hot, that only launched on PS3 for whatever reason. I still don't understand that one. Can you explain that to me, EVE fans? But anyway, I think that they've been doing this for a long time. And to further reinforce that point, if you guys remember the rumors recently, a few months ago even, CCP has been working on an unannounced MMO using the Unreal Engine 4. So this was news that we already knew. They also just launched a mobile game, or are in the process of launching a mobile game, which Asian developers like Pearl Abyss would love. They love the idea of monetizing on mobile platforms because that's a big market for them in South Korea and likely a big market around the world. So yeah, they definitely... CCP was working on this unannounced MMO, I think, as a way to lure potential investors and potential purchasers to purchase their company and potentially infuse them with the type of cash that they need to create another MMO. So this could be another one of those scenarios where CCP figured that the future of their company is based on this unannounced MMO that they have yet to showcase yet. And so they're trying to transition into the future of their career. Of course, after making kind of poor decisions, and not necessarily, or sorry, not to mention not having the best years in terms of their overall revenue. So, or at least I should say profit in particular. People were talking about Dust. Dust failed due to platform and lack of promised interactions. Considering that was the least owned console at the time. Yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff that went on with that, but I'll definitely say I'll agree with Jackie on that. I'm curious about what CCP has in stores. I wonder what their new MMO is going to be, and I really, really think that CCP made this decision and primarily because of this unannounced MMO. I think they wanted to get it funded, or they created this idea and realized that they could use it as a means to sell their company as well. Because if you guys aren't familiar with kind of how developers used to work back in the day, developers back in the day were like the wild, wild west. It was like you came up with an idea and you hope that somebody would fund you. That's basically how it works back then, right? Back in the days, you had, you know, we didn't have these big SOE like companies, well, Daybreak nowadays, but we didn't have companies like that way back when, right? We didn't have Electronic Arts. We didn't have Electronic Arts existed, but not in the MMO space yet. So back then, like, MMOs were really just like, hey, if I could like convince an investor or a big publisher to publish my game, it was basically just like Wild West, especially like if you look at old RPGs, like look at Obsidian type RPGs. Obsidian Entertainment used to just go to whatever publisher would just publish their games. Sega, Atari, they went to BioWare once, they went to LucasArts. It kind of was just like your idea, so to say, was sold to the highest bidder in a lot of ways. So, and then of course we had these big conglomerate companies exist. EA was buying up everyone. We had NCSoft buying up everyone, Tencent buying up everyone. And now it looks like we're gonna see Pearl Abyss kind of creating the same kind of thing, which is like a global presence, is what I think that these Korean companies who come to America or come to Europe really want, is they want more of a global presence. They don't want to be just big in South Korea, which, by the way, being big in South Korea is one of the best places to be big because their MMO audience is incredibly large, but also very, very good to monetize. It's just part, I think maybe it's part cultural. It's also part, they have those, PC bangs all over the place. And so Black Desert was already doing pretty decently in Korea, but not nearly as decent as like Lineage or kind of more staple games that you see in Korean markets. So it's interesting news. Sad for sure. I know a lot of EVE fans are going to be very sad about, they're going to try and see what these changes are going to mean. I've heard personally that there won't be any monetization changes or anything drastic, but we never know, right? People can say such a thing, and business as usual, to go back to that meme, right? I don't think this is going to be business as usual, and hopefully we still get to see this other project that's yet to be announced by CCP, and hopefully it's something exciting, because if it isn't, I mean, man, they had to sell their soul for that. It's kind of one of those things where you think about companies like Mythic, who made Warhammer, or you think about companies like any of the companies that were swallowed up by SOE back in the day, like the Vanguard, the company behind Vanguard, Varen Interactive, and these other companies. Like, you kind of feel bad for them because in a certain way, people have asked me the question before, why do developers give up rights to their games? Why do they allow themselves to get bought out by publishers? And I think people are fundamentally understanding why someone would do such a thing. First off, it's not going to be just because they want to, like on a base level. Like, no one wants to give up their company or give up their idea. It's that sometimes for some people, they're so big picture that the only thing that they're thinking about is just getting their idea out there, right? They want to create the game that they want to create, no matter what the consequences are, to some extent, obviously. And so if they have to break bread with the devil, in this case, of like, going to work with like EA, right? Whenever BioWare was like, we need somebody to fund our game. And basically, well, it's a whole other crazy story that I've mentioned before on my Visceral Games video, my Visceral Games Death of a Game. I've mentioned how EA acquired or managed to acquire BioWare. It's a whole lot more than just acquiring them. But point being, companies like that we knew and loved, and unfortunately now have kind of lost a lot of that allure that they used to have. Those companies get swallowed up because they had these big ideas and they wanted to be funded and whatever else, or maybe they decided to go public and they just got bought out. Point being is that there's a lot more that goes into why a company might want to be bought out or choose to be bought out than meets the eye. And it's not just because they're giving up or they somehow don't believe in their product anymore. Sometimes it means the complete opposite. Sometimes they believe so much in their product, they realize that their product or their game needs more financial backing. It needs more backing. And that's what I really think CCP was looking for here. They didn't necessarily need help to run EVE Online anymore. I don't personally think so. But maybe this new idea, they needed some more money for that, especially after their VR failures. So yeah, that's my topic. My last topic of the discuss current gaming topics section. I want to move on to the counterpoint, where we play devil's advocate to the prominent gaming issues. And in this case, for this week, I've chosen Star Citizen. Yes, sorry, I have to laugh at that one. So Star Citizen, and to be particular, the sorry, someone in chat wanted me to point out that CCP has also had a large amount of debt, or quite some debt. So it looks like CCP also wasn't even doing so well financially, which again, another reason you have to take into consideration why a company would want to be bought, or maybe doesn't have a choice. Because it's either, for some companies, it's either company fails, company folds, or company gets acquired. And I don't know about you guys, but if I had my all of my energy into a game or an idea and I wanted it to be great and I believed in it truly, I would be willing to get acquired if it meant that I could keep it alive, right? So that's usually like a big point why they do this. To be specific about Star Citizen, I'm not going to talk about too much of the drama. I'm actually going to talk about just like kind of one big point here. Now, one of my big issues with the whole Star Citizen, let me turn down the music a little bit. One of the issues that I have with Star Citizen is the whole culture around it that just seems to want it to fail, right? The whole failure culture. And people, I found, misunderstand me in regards to this. They think that I want things to fail. And the truth of the matter is that I don't want anything to fail, right? Like, we ultimately shouldn't personally want things to fail. Now, one thing I need to point out is that it is necessary for things to fail. That's a natural part of the market. There's an ebb and a flow. There's peaks and valleys. There's when Shadowbane developers come out with a game that's way too ambitious for them and fail because of it. It's sad. It sucks for them, but it's completely necessary for the industry or the MMORPG genre as a whole to learn from those experiences, right? Same thing with Dark Ages of Camelot. You have to learn from these experiences. Maybe you learn certain innovations that they did. Look at Warhammer Online. By all accounts, it was a major failure, right? Just about everybody knows that. My video is almost up to 1 million views now. Like, that game itself was like a pretty big failure with this massive, Warhammer universe behind it. But there's some damn good things that Warhammer did right, and you can see those things in many MMOs in current day. Like, for example, public questing is a huge feature in most MMOs now. Even World of Warcraft has its own public questing as well, or open questing or quest zones, whatever you want to talk about. Like, Warhammer kind of pioneered that. Point being is that, yes, things ultimately need to fail in order for the industry or the genre as a whole to move forward. But it's a very, very, very dangerous precedent if we start to want things to fail. That's far, far, far different. It's far different to want things to fail. I don't think we want Star Citizen to fail. Let me reiterate that. I do not think as an industry, as a community, we should want Star Citizen to fail, right? That's a very big distinction that we need to make, because Star Citizen is the most funded Kickstarter at the moment, right? I think it's up to 160 something million or whatever else at this point. Somebody can fact check me in the Twitch chat, but it's in the hundreds of millions, right? It's above 100 million now. That's getting into SWTOR territory. The EA company behind BioWare was putting out that kind of money. So that's the type of stuff. That's the kind of dollars that are behind this project. And what that means from a lot of different perspectives is that there's a lot riding on this game. Obviously, for the company and all of the backers who have put, thousands and thousands of money into the game and bought these ships. And again, I'm saying nothing of the morality of this. I'm saying nothing of if the game is a sham, a scam, anything of that sort. All I am saying is that we shouldn't want it to fail. But the difference between wanting something to fail and understanding that it can fail or why it can fail is very different, right? And that's what I try and do on the channel. I don't just want to talk about things, oh, this game should fail because I don't like it, or this game should fail because of this, right? Did I say SWTOR? SWTOR? Yeah, SWTOR. SWTOR was pretty swole if you're going to talk about financial backing. That is if the budget is for game and not for game marketing together. I just want the game to be released at this point. Yeah, that's the thing, is that I just want to stress to people that, look, I realize that it kind of makes me play devil's advocate when I'm the guy who's saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't want Star Citizen to fail, especially because everyone will talk about, why don't you watch this video of this story and the court case and this, and they promised 3.0 and 4.0 and alpha, it's still in alpha, it's been this amount of years. I realize there are a lot of reasons to be very wary of that game. And I realize there's a lot of writing on the wall if the game were to fail. But I just want to urge for everybody out there, as much as you might think Star Citizen will fail, you shouldn't be happy it fails, right? You shouldn't revel in its failure. You shouldn't have a smile on your face when it fails, right? Because a lot of people, like you or me, put money into that project. And yeah, you might laugh at that in itself, because that can be funny to some extent, right? People putting money into a game that's not even promised anything. Like, you're not promised anything. You could theoretically get nothing like what you wanted, and there's going to be tons of issues because of that. But unfortunately, the way these Kickstarters work, there's not a whole lot of protections for the people who are putting money into these games. Not yet. And I do want to have that conversation another time. Maybe my next week podcast Soapbox, we can talk about it. There do need to be more kind of, in my opinion, safety nets on these Kickstarters and crowdfunded games, for sure. But at the same time, if you're so The reason why I don't sell crowdfunded games to you guys or Kickstarter games to you guys, and when I mean sell, I mean proverbial, like not literally sell it to you, but I mean I never really talk about Camelot Unchained and Crowfall and Albion Online before it launched and Ashes of Creation or Chronicles of Illyria. I don't talk about them that much. And yes, I talk about them, but I don't sell them to you. I don't say you guys should like this game. And the reason for that is because, and I've mentioned this topic before, at the end of the day, an idea is easy to make sound cool. As you guys will learn once you start doing this pitch your game little thing, exercise, if you will, is that it's easy to come up with cool ideas, right? And then you start to think to yourself, why hasn't anyone done this? Well, people have already, likely, whatever you thought, people have already thought of and realized it wasn't feasible, right? That's usually a good argument, I would say. You'll generally find that that's the case. That if you think it's so brain dead, why hasn't anyone done it? Somebody probably has done it and weighed the negatives and the positives and thought it wasn't really worth it. I don't even remember what my last little point was about. Oh, no. Okay, I remember now. Sorry. I have a bad memory. You guys will get used to that on this podcast. You can probably make an emote for how bad my memory is. Question marks everywhere or something along the lines of that. But that's why I don't sell these ideas to you, because that's what they are. These Kickstarter MMOs, they're great. They sound awesome. They look cool. They have all of this backing and they promise this. They promise the world, but they're just ideas. So if you don't believe in an idea enough to put money into it, that's totally fine. That's totally rational. You don't have to, right? Some people don't even believe in pre-ordering things. When you pre-order something, you're actually going to get something. In this case, you don't even know 100% yet if you're going to get what you wanted or if it's going to be what was even like advertised in the first place. So if you're not willing to put money into an idea, aka a Kickstarter, I totally understand that. It's why I'm not willing to sell them to you guys. It's why I'm not willing to tell you guys this is the one, because we don't know yet. None of those Kickstarter games, including Star Citizen, have proven that they have a, well, proof of concept even in a lot of ways. I would even make that argument, which if you guys aren't familiar with a proof of concept, that just means that you have like a base idea that's already sold enough or garnered enough attention to where you already have something that you can prove to investors or to people around you. You can prove to the market that works, right? The proof of concept works. And in this case, none of those Kickstarter MMOs they don't have a proof of concept yet. So from a business perspective, we can't even be completely sure that they're going to deliver on what they have planned. So they're ideas at the end of the day. They're not full games yet. The difference between an idea and a game is you can play it, you can touch it, you can see it, right? It's like real. It's not doctored videos, it's not doctored gameplay, it's not cinematics, it's not blur cinematics, like SWTOR cinematics. Like it's none of that. That's all idea stuff. Like game stuff is when you can actually get in or you see raw gameplay. And many of those Kickstarter projects, if you guys have noticed, and you can go do your research, have not shown us raw gameplay. And there's a reason for that. The games aren't ready yet. They're still in their ideas phases. They're not 100% done yet. I think it's awesome. I totally agree with you, Space Maid Explorer. I think it's awesome. Tool for funding. Kickstarters are an awesome tool for funding. I love the idea of us, the community, the players, getting power and being able to be the ones to fund these games that we've always wanted to come out, right? Like when Dark Ages of Camelot kind of like petered out, we wanted another one. We wanted Mark Jacobs to complete, his vision for what Dark Ages of Camelot was supposed to be. And so Camelot Unchained is very exciting. It's an exciting premise. But again, it's a premise. It's not a game yet. So just be wary of that. But also, Star Citizen, we shouldn't want Star Citizen to fail, but we absolutely should be watching it with we should be watching it with a magnifying glass at this point. Because every little error and issue that they have, like recently, them trying to charge money for people to watch CitizenCon, I realize there's some high stakes and the community is getting fed up with it. And you're starting to see that. People are really railing on the game. Anytime I see it mentioned on Reddit, on forums, on website, anytime I personally mention it on any of my videos, I'm getting railed against as if I'm the guy that's supporting it. I just like to talk about ideas just like anybody else. But I also like to make the distinction between what an idea and a game is. So to close that out, Star Citizen, I know it looks scary, guys. And I know a lot of you guys who are watching or who aren't watching have put a lot of real money into these games. And so you have a lot riding on this. So this is not just a simple, it's going to fail for you. But for the people who are just watching with their peanuts and or the peanut gallery, so to say, by all means, eat your peanuts, throw the peanuts, whatever you need to do. But just be careful about wishing failure on a game that has over $130–40 million budget, which is a catastrophic failure for the MMORPG market as a whole if it fails, right? It's not good for all of us. Look at sci-fi games. When have we had an MMORPG sci-fi game that was actually done really well? And yes, I love Star Wars Galaxies, but I mean, let's be honest. I don't know if I could really argue that it was successful, like in the big scheme of things. We haven't really had successful sci-fi MMOs, and in my personal opinion, the reason is because the stars, that's hard to do, right? It's hard to do space. It's hard to do another dimension. It's hard to just get off of the planet and think about other galaxies, right? And other universes. Like, that's not an easy thing to realize, and it takes an immense amount of development in order to create a world in which you can travel from system to system to system with no load screens, right? Or you can go to other stations on other planets and other flora and other fauna. And I mean, think about these RTS games. Why do RTS games like Stellaris or Endless Legend or whatever else in the space, sorry, why do these games Sins of a Solar Empire, how can they manage to make space so enticing? It's because they don't have the same technical limitations that MMOs do, right? They don't have to worry about the same netcode issues. You might be playing with like 8 other people, 16 people in your Stellaris game, but you're never going to get to 100, 200, thousands, millions of players playing. They don't have the same kind of tech responsibilities. So yeah, Stellaris and Sins of a Solar Empire can make traveling to galaxies look so easy, right? And make the idea of a space MMO in which you could actually control a ship and fly around and be a pirate and have your own tasks and maybe even a job and run spice or something like you're playing Star Wars Galaxies. All of that sounds so cool, but it's not easy to do. And so I'm afraid of Star Citizen failing because I'm afraid of what it's going to mean for the sci-fi MMORPG genre as a whole. Are other MMOs or other developers, other publishers, are they going to be afraid now? Are they going to be wary of putting their big dollars into this type of industry? It's too volatile from their perspective, right? It's too volatile. MMOs are volatile. There's a reason why we don't have, tons of different AAA MMORPG companies, just littering and making all of these different types of games. Loitering is kind of what I meant, not littering. But we don't have tons of AAA MMORPG companies that make MMOs constantly because they are, by nature, a massive multiplayer online game is ambitious, especially one in space, right? And so that's my big fear with Star Citizen, is what is it going to mean for the sci-fi MMORPG market as a whole? Yeah, exactly, Ludens. It's also the reputation of Kickstarter MMOs. Let me drink some water. How am I doing, guys? Am I doing all right? I would love KOTOR. That would have a timeline where the dark side wins. KOTOR 2 happened a little bit differently. I don't know how that was related to this topic, but I see where your head's at. You're thinking space, and I love KOTOR as well, if you guys can't tell. Make a MMO Battle Royale, free money right there. At this point, I'm more interested in Dual Universe and Star Citizen. That's a good point. We should talk about Dual Universe, and maybe we'll talk about it next week. Dual Universe is another sci-fi ambitious project where they're trying to, once again, capture the wonder from the stars, right? Don't you just want to smile when you think about the idea of a sci-fi MMO? Just imagine this, right? You load in, you're on your little simple dust planet, ode to Tatooine planet, and you're thinking to yourself, man, I just want to be a smuggler. I just want to be a smuggler. So you steal, you make deals, you smuggle little goods here and there until you get enough money to buy a ship. You buy a ship, it's nothing pretty. It's the well, to be fair, I think the Y2 2000 or 2200 in Star Wars is an amazing ship. But I'm just trying to say it's kind of rickety. It's Ebon Hawk looking. It kind of seems old. It's scratched. It's not the best looking ship, but it's your ship, right? And you get to fly that ship around in space, and you feel all of this wonder for it. You feel attached to that ship. It grows with you. You're putting new, chassis in it. You're putting new shields in it. You're putting new weapons in it. Whatever else, right? New cockpit. And now you start to do your smuggling reigns in space, or maybe you get so good that your given universe or solar system, you dominate the space area now. So maybe you move to more universes and more universes. Maybe you go to other planets and now your business is working on these planets and stuff like that. That's the type of thoughts that I have when I think of a sci-fi MMO, right? Or maybe you don't want to be a smuggler. Maybe you want to be a police officer or some type of intergalactic police force who tries to track down smugglers, right? Maybe that's you. Or maybe you're a bounty hunter. Or maybe you're some, EVE Online general who has thousands of soldiers in his force who's ready to conquer a new galaxies. All of that stuff sounds so exciting to me, and that's what I love about universes like Star Wars or even Star Trek to a lesser extent. But we still haven't had that in an MMORPG, and that's what I think, was so cool about the idea of a game like Star Citizen in the first place was, for me at least. Isn't that just EVE? Yeah, if you like playing a game which is an RTS simulator, which also doesn't have the same planetary interaction that I started off my conversation with. In fact, that was the part of EVE Online that they kept trying to fix, but unfortunately weren't able to fix, which sucks. Reminds me of the old space MMO Earth and Beyond. Weirdly enough, I was thinking about doing a Death of a Game on that game, but I ended up kind of deciding to do something a little bit more wholesome. I was in a wholesome mood last night when I chose which next video I wanted to work on, which we have 2 videos that are going to be planned for this week as well. So no, for people saying in the comments, me doing a podcast doesn't mean that I'm somehow going to do less work. If anything, it just means I'll do more work, because ultimately I don't have my editor full time, so I can't have him here working on every single video that I ever want to make. If I could, hint hint, Patreon donors, if I could, then the amount of content that we would produce would be insane. Oh, that's another thing I want to address. We're running a little bit over the current segment, but I saw someone say something along the lines of, after I announced the podcast, that they were a little bit troubled, that they believed that the future of my channel is so based on failed MMOs that sooner or later I'm going to run out of them. At the end of the day, I'll never run out of games to cover that are failing or failed, right? It's just impossible, because games will always fail. It's an evolving market. So we're never going to run out of content. Will I run out of big MMOs to talk about? Sure. Maybe I won't have another game like EverQuest to talk about, right? Or maybe after I do a PlanetSide video, I won't have another type of PlanetSide game to talk about. That's very possible, but that's just a natural progression. The good news is that I have many other series and videos planned for the channel. I have a series that's planned that's actually just going to focus on single player titles. So don't be worried about that at all. If you guys like me, I'll be around. If you only like me covering the big popular MMORPG videos, well, sorry, there's only a finite amount of those. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. That's going to be our MMOs on the go segment, which is where we're just going to talk about some random MMOs and just a little bit of information here and there. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to show you guys on screen was going to be Ashes of Creation about 2 weeks ago, showing off some gameplay.
So last night on the Ashes of Creation...
that's Lazy Peon. I'm using Lazy Peon's video to demonstrate this for you guys. Okay, so we'll play this in the background as we talk. So Ashes of Creation showed off some gameplay, showcasing an action combat system, which I know caught many people off guard. We expected it to be more action-oriented, but I kind of had like Arcade in mind. I wasn't sure they were going to go completely action, and now obviously this is pre-alpha footage or alpha footage. It's quite early. It's also, I'm pretty sure they just fully implemented this combat system, so the combat system itself is quite new. But as you can see here, these are some players playing on the pre-alpha servers, doing a siege type of test, I believe, if I remember correctly. Peon was saying that in the video. It looks pretty active. I'm actually quite surprised that they went for such an ambitious type of action combat system, because I'm in the process of making a video about combat systems in MMORPGs and which is better, which is the best going forward. Obviously, I talk about tab target, and of course, I talk about action combat systems. What I find is that action combat systems typically in MMOs, and you guys can do the research if you want to double check this statement. I've already done it to give you spoilers, but I found that a lot of action combat games actually aren't true action combat. And to quantify what I'm saying so people understand what my definition of a true action combat system is, it's basically this. If you're watching, and mind you, unless they're hiding HUD here that we don't know about, but a true action combat system to me is a game like Darkfall. It's Unreal Tournament. It's Jedi Academy. It's games in which are more physics-based and have what I like to call hard aim boxes, which means that in order to hit this guy on screen, as you can see, the target has to, as far as we know, actually swing at his character model or actually hit his character model with a certain spell. That's what I like to call a hard box aim, right? Most action combat games, funny enough, don't have that. They don't have physics-based engines, period. In fact, many of them are just tab target in disguise with a more action combat type of combat system. So, say, for example, they have mouse swings where you can press your mouse and you do some kind of light swing, or maybe you have a heavy swing. They have combos. They have to aim to some extent what I like to call a soft hitbox. A soft hitbox, as I've illustrated before, and I'll do a video on it, of course. It basically, a soft hitbox is kind of like the idea that if I aim in the general direction, if you guys think about Black Desert Online, Terra Online, if I aim at the general direction, I'm going to hit my target, right? So that's what most action combat MMOs have. It's not... Yeah, so I actually noticed that Peon's showing it off here. That looks like a bit of a soft hitbox. And again, that's totally okay. Everything doesn't need to be completely physics-based, completely hard aim box based, because I realize that's hard to implement, and it's especially hard to implement with latency issues. So if I'm, poor Oceanic region, they always get screwed over by MMO servers. If they're trying to play on a Europe server or a Japanese server or an American server, they're going to have severe latency issues, which means that if they play a game like Darkfall, which has a true physics-based action combat system, a high ping in those games is a death sentence. As you guys know in FPS, imagine playing an FPS with 100 FPS, or sorry, that'd be awesome actually, maybe 144 FPS, but 100 latency, 100 ping, right? 200 ping, 300 ping. Now we're getting into very, very scary territory where you basically won't be able to compete, not adequately, with someone with your same skill level with 100 plus ping, 200 plus ping. They're likely going to win, right? Soft hitboxes, they're totally fine, right? I understand for the tech limitations that we probably currently still have in 2018, that's okay, right? Seeing the soft hitbox there, I'm okay with that. That doesn't make me sad, right? As you can see, he doesn't fully land the swing here, but he still manages to hit his target. That's what we call a soft hitbox. That's in 99% of action combat MMOs currently out. So that's nothing completely new there. That's totally fine. But what looks cool is, as you can see here, the guy has like some type of long range like spear or something, and he manages to connect a swing on the guy while the other guy can't connect a swing on him. Or actually, that's a different engagement that they're showing. Yeah, see, the guy goes to swing there and lands the swing because he was looking at his target. So once again, soft boxes here. These aren't hard boxes, but it looks rather action combat, and it looks like it has a physics engine. We saw that earlier where one of the guys was managed to knock one of the guys up, and the other guy managed to teleport through a wall. So we know physics is a thing in this game. We just don't know to what extent. So I think it looks kind of exciting, but we'll only know once we can actually get our own access to being able to touch the game ourselves. Now, I also wanted to show off a Pantheon's gameplay, so we're gonna switch to Pantheon. Now, this is a stream, and this is the best quality, unfortunately, that I can find. This is pre-alpha gameplay of Pantheon from the streamer Bazgrim, and this was done, I believe, yeah, it looks like last month. They were doing a dungeon run, and so now this one is going to be obviously a little bit rougher than the previous gameplay, which I think, by the way, is quite a feather in the cap of the Ashes of Creation team. I know everyone's talking about, but my.com is publishing it, but my.com is publishing it. I realize that. I know my.com doesn't have the best track record. I don't want to say that's the death knell yet. Like, I don't think that's the death blow yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not convinced that means it's not going to work, period. But you have to admit, Ashes of Creation have made drastic improvements in their game in a short amount of time, better than anybody else I've seen. And I've talked to Lazy Peon personally, who got to go to Ashes of Creation studio and actually play the game, and they didn't put him on an NDA or anything. He basically was just telling me a story about how the game has come so far, is what he was telling me. And you could tell immediately. But anyway, to get to Pantheon, Pantheon looks a little bit rougher, I would say. But I think that's totally fine for the type of audience that it's trying to entice. Pantheon, by nature, is going to be a more niche product because it's really trying to relive the old wonder and difficulty of the kind of group PvE settings and raids and dungeons that were prevalent in EverQuest 1. Of course, as everyone probably knows at this point, Brad McQuaid is working on this project, so it's certainly going to have what you would expect from an EverQuest game. I'm trying to see if I can actually load some of the boss fights in here. It really does remind me of EverQuest, though. You know, lulz in chat, but it does remind me of EverQuest because there's a lot of waiting around here. Or Star Wars Galaxies where you're trying to get a certain pet. I will say that despite the quality being a little bit poor, I think the visuals look interesting enough. I like how they're not super high fantasy. They are a bit more stylized, but they weren't like Ashes of Creation's levels of high fantasy. That stuff was looking quite colorful. This looks like a little bit more low fantasy. Like, this looks like what you would expect from an EQ1 game, I would say. The combat here, it looks very kind of rhythmic. It's obviously tab target combat, but it looks like a different form of tab target combat. And once again, just so you guys realize, I don't think tab target combat is bad, as you guys will see in the video that I'm going to publish this week. I don't think it's a bad combat system at all. In fact, I think it's the safest combat system. I think that's why we see the majority of it. The cool thing about tab target, as you can see in a game like Pantheon, is it really reinforces the idea of choice, of taking your time, of choosing the best possible ability to use at that time. It's more about knowledge, it's more about planning, it's more about your group working together, right? I would typically argue that that probably is true as a whole for tab target games versus action combat games. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing here. One thing I noticed a bit, and I don't know if it's maybe some of the skill level of the players we're watching, but there's a lot of downtime, but there's also a lot of lulls in combat. And that really reminds me of a classic CRPG game. That might be what they're trying to accomplish, but I'm curious because if they are indeed going after the older audience here, they're likely not going to miss a step, right? The older audience is used to a slower combat system. They're used to a tab target combat system. They're used to a more methodical approach. They're used to a lot of downtime. But the thing that I'm worried about with Pantheon is I don't know how convinced I am that it's going to be able to address issues that previous games had in regards to attracting a newer audience, right? Maybe they can survive just fine off of a core audience. A lot of MMOs surprisingly can. Maybe they can survive with a 50,000 person player base or 20,000 person player base. Many MMOs have those kind of player numbers and survive just fine. So it's possible, but if they're going to have any type of major success, they're going to have to address the issues of, you know, that EverQuest 1 still had, the slow time to kill things, the really slow methodical pace of things. Like, and I don't mean just in combat, because I enjoy that it looks like each person is kind of weighing out which ability they should use in certain instances. It's not to the WoW levels of combat where it's kind of you're just spamming the same rotation over and over again. It looks a little bit reactionary or knowledge-based to some extent. But certainly after they were killing the mobs, it seemed like there was a lot of downtime. Like if we skip ahead here, I mean, we can just basically make a video out of just watching the amount of downtime here. And again, people like this. Some people like downtime. But when I think of like the young Fortnite crowd or the young MMORPG crowd, the World of Warcraft crowd, the Terra Online crowd, the Guild Wars 2 crowd, the ESO crowd, I don't know how happy they're going to be about such downtime. I don't really know if they... And again, that part didn't look so bad. The previous one had way more downtime. If I remember correctly, this one had quite a lot of downtime that they had to wait. But again, it's likely because they're coaching them through. They're taking their time. It's totally fine. But I'm just... To sum up my thoughts on Pantheon, I'm just not totally convinced that such a type of model is going to attract a newer audience. But I will gladly be wrong because I want this game to succeed, because I think that there is a niche that it needs to fill. I still think that there is a niche of the dungeon crawler, raid crawler, difficult PvE group content type game. There's still plenty of room for such a game. Okay, what do we have next that I wanted to talk about? Ooh, so New World has released a bunch of new information, and they even released an interview that you can watch where they interviewed, I believe, yeah, it says right here, Patrick Gilmore. Now, if you guys don't know already, I actually got the chance to fly to Amazon Studios and play New World. I'm unfortunately under NDA, so I literally can't talk about anything other than the fact that I play it, and I can play it even at this time. They've given us beta access at home, which they didn't have before. Alpha access at home, and they've even opened up alpha signups for other people as well. So for you people that are interested in seeing what it's about, if you go to New World's website, you can sign up for the alpha. Obviously, you're not going to immediately get invited, and it's an invite, it's like a first come, first serve kind of thing, like you would expect from typical alpha type games. So maybe you get your chance, maybe not. But point being is that if you're interested, that's the place to go. And of course, feel free to watch the developer interview that they did with Gilmore, or just read this any of the articles that you can find. I can talk about the information that was released here. And as the interviewer suggested, New World feels like an evolution of Rust. That I can nod my head to, right? Because that's publicly released information. So luckily, I can talk about that. The feels like an evolution of Rust. I would agree with that, right? I think that's a fair assessment that this guy's making. Gilmore says that although the devs were inspired by survival crafting games of that ilk, they really focused on going beyond that to incorporate more traditional MMO elements. So I think that that's a good thing for him to say, because although some people might look at New World, even just the art style, and think, it looks like a medieval kind of evolution of Rust, I think that Gilmore and team and the Amazon team behind New World have much more planned than that, right? I think, as they said right here, right, they're trying to incorporate more traditional MMO elements, and they want players to focus on this, creating this sandbox that players can chart their own course throughout the world. I think that's all the right things that they need to say, because while survival games are quite popular, what I find that they typically lack in is based around permanence, and that's really where MMORPGs to me are quite unique. MMORPGs can stress permanence, right? It's an actual virtual world. Well, I don't want to get too technical. Most of them aren't actual virtual worlds, and that's probably kind of the problem with a lot of MMOs feeling so boring these days, but I digress. Point being is that MMORPGs like ESO have permanence. When you log in after not logging in for 6 months, your character's still there, your house is still there, your roles are still there, you're still the same level. And I think that's sort of the things that most survival games lack. And maybe New World is trying to kind of accomplish kind of like a halfway point to where it's like kind of a survival game, and it's also going to have these more MMO-like elements, which I think is an interesting premise. What else can we talk about here? Gilmore confirms that death in New World would be something of a big deal. Although players will get to keep anything they equipped upon death, items in their inventory will be fair game to looters. To hear everything Gilmore had to say about New World, okay, blah, blah, blah. That's the rest of the article. I sounded like a radio host there. Yeah, so, bam, we just realized that they're not playing around with New World when it comes to PvP. They're allowing you to loot what was in the person's inventory, but not equipped. And I totally, actually, I'm not against such an idea. I actually like that idea. And the reason that I like that idea is because it allows for full loot with certain kind of like restrictions. And to me, it's rational to have such a restriction that you don't lose what's equipped on you. And here's my reasoning for that. How many times have you guys played a survival game or a full loot MMO? And I know most of you are like, we don't play full loot MMOs. I realize that. It's a niche audience. But survival games, right? And you lose all your stuff and you start on the beach again. And you're like, oh my God, I have to do it all over again. And I have nothing to fight. And that griefer just comes up on the coast and just blows your brains out. And you're just like, what the heck? This isn't even fair. I don't even have gear and I'm getting killed when I'm naked. I think New World is trying to kind of alleviate that issue by being like, look, you can still have your weapons, your gear, and such. It will take a loss when it dies, right? Maybe you'll have a gear loss, or like in terms of durability. Maybe you'll have a durability loss, or maybe you can risk losing the items that you have in your inventory, but you're not going to lose your ability to fight. And although it doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of like immersion, because you're like, wait a minute, if I just died, then why do I still have gear on me? I mean, come on, guys. We suspend ourselves in disbelief all the time. The idea of dying in a game and then coming back alive is already a suspension in disbelief anyway. But I think this is an actual interesting premise, and I think it's a possibility to see in PvP MMORPGs moving forward that want to introduce more kind of loot-based PvP, more what I like to call consequences for PvP. PvP. To have more consequences in PvP MMOs is super important. Otherwise, they just kind of become like lobby games or just feel like a MOBA, right? Like, what's the difference between an MMORPG that doesn't have loot or doesn't have consequences, period, and a MOBA? It's not a whole lot, right? Like, yeah, like MOBAs don't have long-form progression in the same way that an MMORPG does, like World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online. It doesn't have the same progression overall, but it still certainly is kind of the same old rinse and repeat, fight, meaningless kind of no consequence battles, like besides rank and maybe like arena rank or something like that. So I think that that's an interesting idea and something that I'm surprised we haven't seen more. I think Asheron's Call used to do that. Asheron's Call used to do that type of inventory system, and so did Shadowbane, I believe. So it's already like this concept has been around, but it just hasn't really been that common. So I think it's interesting to see. But yeah, that's all we have for the MMOs on the go section of this podcast. We're gonna move on to the fun stuff, which is pitch your game. As far as I know, Dragonstar, it's going to be a subscription-based MMO. That's what I've heard in regards to how New World is going to be monetized. And that's, of course, anything that's publicly disclosed, I can say that. I can't say anything else. So I can only say what's been publicly disclosed, which that, yes, it is going to be, or they're looking at the option of a subscription-based game, which Amazon can certainly pull off such a thing. But yeah, so for this section, pitch your game. This is just a fun little section. I want to talk with you guys, the audience, and you can feel free, if you can't talk about it now in chat, feel free to send me messages, send me an email, xforcegamer@gmail.com. I'll type it in chat, just in case you guys don't already have my email, which should be on my YouTube page. And you can also message me on Discord if you want to send me your little 250-word pitch your game. And if 250 is not enough words, I'm willing to go maybe 50 to 100 more. But I don't want people to send me giant essays about what their games are, because it's not going to be really fun. Yeah, exactly, Limpos. It might fall under Twitch Prime. He was talking about in regards to for the people who can't see chat. He was talking about in regards to how they monetize New World. It could be tied to Twitch Prime. They have that ability. Anyway, so the theme for this week is actually going to be psychological thrillers. So let's talk about psychological thrillers. Can you guys tell me any examples off the top of your head? I know people are going to probably say Alan Wake is a psychological thriller. That's probably a pretty big one. I think you could say in some cases, the Indigo Prophecy or Fahrenheit, that's a psychological thriller. Heavy Rain, basically any Quantic Dream game is typically a psychological thriller to some extent. Silent Hill, other people in chat are saying Silent Hill. That's another good one. So those are some examples for you guys. What's your idea of a psychological thriller type game? Like, give me your pitch in 250 words. The winner, the person with the best pitch, will win a mug that I will send to you. And we'll have a big giant moon with the Nerd Slayer, NS on screen. If you guys haven't seen that one already, I'll show it to you. I believe I should probably just put it like up here on the screen so you guys can get excited of what you could potentially win. It's this one. You win this mug. Now, I can obviously put it in whatever color you want, ultimately. But yeah, you win a free mug. I figured I'd give something away to entice people to want to do more. And again, this is going to be a revolving door of a segment. It's not always going to be about pitching your game. We might also do like original memes where you guys can create memes based on the show, based on the podcast, or based on any of my videos or me personally. That'll be some other time. But this week, like I said, pitch your game, psychological thrillers. We don't have to do it all now. I'm just putting that out there that's the week theme. And feel free to message me on Discord. Like I said, email me or put anything in any of my YouTube comments. I'll probably read them all because I pretty much read all of the comments. People were saying Alone in the Dark, Eternal Darkness, Outlast. Those are some other good examples. So yeah, for everybody interested, message me. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next segment because, yeah, we're not really made to talk about that segment for a particularly long amount of time. So let me go back to Big Face, and we can transition to the next section of the podcast, which is From the Vault, where we talk about old school games, any type of game, and do a little bit of ode. It's a remembrance, right? It's a shout back. It's nostalgia. We'll talk about games that you probably can't even remember being a game, and just have a little bit of 10 to 15 minute nostalgia. I'm trying to find. I don't even think I added the scene. I'm gonna have to create it right here on the spot. We esports now. This is professional, right, guys? We just gotta do it on the fly. That's how it goes. Okay, where is this thing? I need to find where I uploaded the previous versions. Okay, I found it. Let me add the graphic. Okay, cool. There you go. Esports, right. Okay, so this week's From the Vault is going to be on old school NCSoft game X Steel. Now, X Steel was a lobby shooter MMO that used the Unreal Engine and looked very much akin to a Gundam Wing MMO of sorts, and probably was the closest thing we've ever had to such. It launched in 2007 and shut down in 2010. And I'll show some gameplay on screen so if you guys have never heard of this game. So X Steel, I remember this game just because it was like the idea of what if we could make a Gundam Wing MMO or a Gundam MMO or a Mobile Suit Gundam MMORPG. That would be so cool. And I've always found the gameplay when you can pilot a mech to be so fun. And this is X Steel on screen. Came out in 2007, like I said, and was unfortunately shut down 3 years after. But this was kind of like a lobby, like progression-based MMO. It wasn't an MMO in the traditional sense. Like, it wasn't the RPG MMO that we're used to, where you level up certain amounts or whatever else. This was kind of more of like a lobby-based game, kind of close to like Global Agenda to some extent. And what I found so interesting about this game, and the reason why I wanted to talk about it on our From the Vault section this week, was that, again, first off, we've criminally had very little mobile suit type games, period, right? Just in general. Like, yeah, we get the Dynasty Warriors Gundam Wing game or the Gundam Dynasty Warriors game, which is like, okay, but it's not really the same. And I don't know if you guys remember, but have you ever been to an arcade as a kid? They used to have these like mech suit games that you could play where you could pilot the controls and it like vibrated sometimes or whatever else. It was one of my favorite arcade games because it made it feel like you were playing in a Gundam yourself. Armored Core is another good example people are mentioning, by the way, in chat. But we don't get to see a whole lot of games like this, and Armored Core is even different than a mobile suit game because an Armored Core game doesn't have nearly as cool powers, in my opinion, as you typically see in Gundam series or in the Gundam series. But yeah, I mean, it's just I'm so surprised that you don't really see more of these, and you don't see the Gundam IP. I mean, I guess it's probably owned by by numerous different companies at this point because there's so many different franchises within it. Does Scarlet Blade count? I'm not sure. I don't even think I remember that game unless that's the PS3 game, if I'm trying to remember correctly. But yeah, I thought this one would be cool to show because you look back and you're like, man, this came out in 2007. This combat looks kind of fun. Once you got... Oh, you're only joking. Isn't Devolver remastering a Gundam game this year? That's what I've heard, but I don't know. I don't remember what Gundam game it was. I think it's Versus something or VS something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But hey, if it's good, I can't wait to try it out. Wait, yeah, like I was saying, doesn't this combat look so fun? Like, yeah, the animations are kind of cheesy. Like after you kill someone, it just says kill. That's kind of weird. But the idea of being able to lock in on your targets and fly around and fly vertically and stuff, you don't see as much vertical flying here. I think because of the way the maps are constructed, they seem kind of like giant arenas. I actually could easily tell you now, I think one of the biggest issues with this game, just looking at it, is the map design. Seems like they need like maybe a bigger map if they're trying to have the level of combat that they wanted to have. I think it's called Metal Wolf Chaos. Okay, that's not the one I'm talking about. I guess I'm talking about the Japanese one. That's like Gundam something VS. They have this really weird name where it's like it's kind of like a Dynasty Warriors game, but I think you have a little bit more control over your character to some extent. Let's go back to Big Face. I just legit call it Big Face. So that, yeah, I'm done with my From the Vault section. Now to move on to the soapbox time. Let's do the little transition, please. Oh, wrong one. There we go. Esports. Gundam Versus. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. I couldn't remember if it was Gundam Versus or not. Oh, wait, we're supposed to go Big Face. Okay, so this is kind of piggybacking off of my previous topic of Star Citizen. And I really wanted to stress something with you guys, and that's talking about how innovation works, right? So innovation is this thing that essentially happens. Like we can even get down to a more molecular level, right, of detail. We can get to the definition. The actual definition of innovation says it's the action or process of innovating. Well, that's not helpful. It says a new method, idea, product. And in this case, in regards to gaming, an innovation could be something small. It could be having a tab target combat system that allows you to have a spammable auto attack, right? Or maybe it's a game removing their auto attack in favor of having more action type abilities. Or maybe it's combos and tab target games like Blade and Soul. Or maybe it's the action combat system, right? Yeah, micro level. I was trying to be nerdy and say some biology stuff. Innovation can be a small process, or it can be a large process. But what a lot of people don't understand about innovation in regards to MMORPGs is that we kind of need things to fail in order for things to really innovate. And what I mean is that if everyone on a core level just decides to make the most proven game that they can possibly make based on current trends and based on previous trends, it essentially means that that game will innovate zilch. It won't innovate at all, right? If a game is just completely safe and completely relies on preconceived or past notions of what games are and current notions of what games are, current trends and past trends, it's not really going to innovate in any way, right? It's going to kind of stay the same. So we have to be careful about wanting games to stay the same or not wanting games to start to innovate. But here's where the dangerous precedent happens. You can't want games to fail, but you kind of need them to fail. Right? That's the truth. You need MMORPGs to fail because you need somebody to come into the world. Like, let's say, for example, I'm a developer and I come into the MMORPG world right now and I'm like, you know what? Games right now are too easy. So I'm going to make games more difficult. I'm going to make my MMORPG more difficult, even from level 1, right? That's an innovation to some extent, right? If I can manage to implement it in a fun, exciting way. Let's say I go for the Dark Souls approach and everybody loves the game. It's a cult classic, right? That's an innovation, right? But that innovation took me taking a risk. I took a serious risk when I decided to make a game that had a lot of difficulty, right? That had Dark Souls-like difficulty. It was not an easy decision to make because it, off the bat, already potentially alienates an entire fan base of maybe more casual, more easygoing gamers, right? So when an MMORPG comes out and it promises full loot, for example, that feature is its divisive feature, right? That's the feature that already divides the audience. It's already guaranteeing that it's not going to appeal to a very large audience. And now, obviously, all of this can be subject to change because trends change, for example. But generally speaking, full loot as an example, or very difficult PvE are kind of niche things, right? My point is, though, is that when I come onto the market and I decide to implement my very difficult PvE, that's a big risk. That means that that risk opens me up to a higher potential, a higher percentage to failure, right? I have a higher percentage to fail. And that is scary. That is why big MMORPG games or companies or developers that come in and want to make projects who have these big budgets or these big publishers behind them can't make a bunch of risky things. They can't create a game based on risk. It's too risky, right? Like, obviously, you have to rely a little bit on trends, right? So that's why a lot of games rely on tab target combat systems, right? That's why a lot of games rely on the easier early game player versus environment. They feel like they have to because it's safer to do that. But the reason why that's dangerous in itself is that if we don't take risks as a genre, as a community, we're never going to innovate, right? So games can't innovate if they don't take risks. So that's the important thing to realize, is that although games like Darkfall Online or Shadowbane or Dark Ages of Camelot or EverQuest 1 or... Well, EverQuest 1's a bad example because it's actually still running and doing semi-decently. Warhammer Online is a better example. Tabula Rasa, many of the games that I've covered, Fallen Earth, APB, a lot of these games did things that were so risky and so innovative and so unique that, I mean, APB essentially created GTA Online, if you think about it to some extent. They looked at APB and were like, dang, the creator of GTA Online created this other GTA Online. Maybe we should create such a thing, right? Things like that, that innovation is what entices other people to come to the market. And I know Rockstar has had their issues with monetizing GTA Online. I'm not trying to say it's a positive innovation to some extent, but we can have negative innovations, or you can attribute innovations to being negative largely, or being positive largely. But point being is that all of these games on my channel, I'm not a fearmongerer, right? I don't want things to fail. I'm not an inherently cynical, negative person. If you guys know me well or know me personally, as you will begin to learn about me from watching this podcast, hopefully, you will learn that I just care more about why things are failing, the inner workings of things. And it's important, and the reason why especially I talk about games like APB and Fallen Earth, or maybe even the Culling, games that kind of have a smaller audience and are a little bit more niche, is that some of these ideas that these games talk about are so different and so new, and that's unfortunately a large reason why they fail, right? Because when you're the first person to do a new innovative thing, it generally means you're kind of going to be the one that fails, right? Like, I'm sure the first guy to use a funny analogy, the first guy that tried to cut bread into slices might have cut himself, right? Maybe he cut himself for the funniness of and hilarity of my analogy. Maybe he cut himself, but the second guy learned not to cut himself, right? And all of a sudden, sliced bread is this like amazing invention, right? To use that as a funny example. Obviously, there's a lot of examples in MMORPGs, like combat systems. We started with tab target, but we actually, funny enough, we had an action combat system way back when. It was, I think, in like 1999, the first the action combat system that we had. It wasn't really action combat, obviously, like nothing in what we would imagine to be action combat, but it certainly probably helped lead the way to more action combat style systems. So if you guys understand my point, my soapbox talk today is just about innovation. We got to realize that sometimes it is necessary for things to fail in order to teach other people how to learn from those failures, right? And that's what we try and hope to do with the channel too, in our podcast and all the other content we put out. We're not just trying to talk about failures in isolated instances and just be like, well, they failed because they suck. No, there's reasons that things fail, right? There's business reasons. There's artistic reasons. There's personal reasons. There's sometimes the game's not even bad and it fails, right? That happens all the time. Sometimes games are good and they fail. But there's reasons, right? And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. And at the end of the day, although it's sad when games fail, and it certainly sets a dangerous precedent to want games to fail, it's ultimately very, very important for games to fail so we can create more innovative games. So that's what I'm excited for right now in the world of MMORPGs. Yes, I realize it's a little bit quiet. There's not a whole lot of games right now that are out there that are probably new and exciting and innovative. I'll turn that off for my next podcast. But thank you for following Kondo. Blay? Was that Blay or Blue? I couldn't read it in time. Yeah, exactly. Somebody in chat said the first guy who tried to make the wheel, right? it's not going to be easy. The first guy to make the wheel probably made it in squares, right? He probably didn't understand that you had to make it a circle. And then once they figured out you can make it a circle, they were like, wow, this is way easier than a square or a rectangle. But that's my soapbox time talk for this week. Just talking about innovation and the way it works. Because if sometimes people ask, why do you cover these games that we know nothing about? Or why do you cover these games that we've never heard of? Well, that's because if I only covered games you've heard of, then we wouldn't get to talk about the games that also innovated, but unfortunately failed because of other reasons. And maybe we can learn why they failed. Maybe their innovation was their failure. Or maybe their lack of knowledge of innovation or what would happen if they innovated was also their failure. And you see that in a lot of games. A lot of them. I'll just follow after the stream ends. Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to make you guys not want to follow. I'm just... I got to learn how to take that off next time because I don't know if the YouTube audience is going to be so happy if that happens. But anyway. So we're going to go ahead to our last segment of the podcast. Yes, I know. Time has flied, right? It's really flying at the moment, especially for me, being my first time doing a podcast. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed so far. And we'll do our last segment. So for the last segment, the call-in section, the hot takes, this is where we open up Twitter, we open up Discord, we look at anything, right? We're trying to look at any hot takes that you guys have, whether it be on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Discord. Give me your hot takes right now. I want to hear your hot takes. And by a hot take, I mean something that you believe to be a against the grain comment, right? Something that you think would ruffle the majority of people's feathers. Something that goes against what the conventional, overarching, generalistic points of view are, right? Like, for example, if I say Witcher 3 is a bad game, that's a hot take. And we'll talk about some hot takes here. What do we got, guys? Give me something good. I'm curious. Come on. I know you guys have some good hot takes. What do you think is overrated? What do you think is underrated? Ooh. So the first hot take we have on booth says Studio Ghibli is overrated. Man. Studio Ghibli being overrated. I don't even know how to begin that one. I guess from what kind of perspective would you say that Studio Ghibli is overrated? Because I think as a large whole, their top 3 movies are probably the best animated movies. But I will agree with you that doesn't mean that just because Studio Ghibli did a movie means it's good. That I will very much agree on. I thought The Secret Life of Arrietty, for example, was like, it's okay. It was all right. And I just actually saw another movie that was made by some of the same creators of Studio Ghibli, but it wasn't actually Studio Ghibli. Excuse me, I can't remember which one it was. But it was the one of it's on Netflix at the moment. She's like a witch or something along the lines of that. Couldn't remember that one exactly. But yeah, I think I'll kind of agree with that. I think I want to say, sorry, I don't want to say I agree. I don't think Studio Ghibli is overrated, but I will certainly say that just because Studio Ghibli does a movie doesn't automatically mean it's good. They've made some middle end movies before, like My Neighbors, the Yamadas. It's like okay. What's that other one? Tales from the Earthsea. That one's all right, right? It's not great, but if you're gonna look at their catalog, they've mostly put out good products. So I don't know if I'd agree. No, Kiki's Delivery Service is a Studio Ghibli movie. I'm talking about it's from some of the same creators, but it's not Studio Ghibli. It just came out pretty relatively recent. Sorry. All right, what else we got? So some of these are really good, but I'm trying to pick some in particular. Okay. The last good MMO that actually tried was Guild Wars 2. You'll have to quantify what you mean, or qualify what you mean by actually tried. Because Guild Wars 2 had a pretty huge budget, and it also had a pretty good, well-established IP at that point. So I don't know if I can say it's the last good MMO that actually tried. If you're trying to say, like, greatly innovate, I would agree. I actually do agree. I think it's unfair to lump Guild Wars 2 with Final Fantasy XIV, Elder Scrolls, and, yeah, I would say those two, or World of Warcraft. Like, I don't think you should lump those in together, because I do think that Guild Wars 2 does try and innovate in certain ways. It did try and be unique, at least like initially. Like, its initial vision was grand. It was promising to be quite new and different. So I think that's a fair assessment. I would say that it's probably the last AAA MMO that tried to be different as an MMORPG. So I would agree with that one. Cowboy Bebop is overrated. I don't even know if I can take that one that seriously. What's overrated about Cowboy Bebop? You have to think about it. It came out, when did Cowboy Bebop come out? Cowboy Bebop. I just lost all of my stream chat, by the way. I'm gonna have to open up my logs because I accidentally refreshed my page. Cowboy Bebop came out in... Why doesn't it just say it on the first page? 2001. Wait, no, that was the movie, I believe. Cowboy Bebop came out in 1998. How you can say an anime came out in 1998 and could be overrated and be that good? I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't agree with that. One thing that you guys have to realize about watching classic movies, shows, or playing classic games is that you have to play them or watch them with a certain kind of eye. And what I mean is that you have to realize if you take them in today's current environment and put them up there against other like behemoths of the space, like in the case of Cowboy Bebop, if you compare it to like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, like, yeah, it doesn't have the same scope or special effects or art style or like quality of like voice actor or anything that can really compare to such a popular and massively impactful anime. But at the same time, if you look at it contained within when it came out in 1998, and it takes like the same kind of thread that Trigun follows and even Firefly follows, which is kind of the idea of like the cowboy in space, which is an interesting and unique premise that even today you don't really see used all that much. What else do we have? This is a hot take, Steak MCC. He says that Classic WoW will have more concurrent players than Battle for Azeroth. Wow, that's a hot take. Why do you say that? I'm curious. I certainly think Classic WoW will have more than the majority of MMO's population, probably in the millions, or at least I think my hot take is that it breaks 1 mil. But I don't know how much of a hot take that is. That doesn't seem to be on the same level that Steak MCC is saying. He's saying that it's going to have more concurrent players than BFA, which is World of Warcraft's most recent expansion. That's quite... I don't know if I can say no or yes. I don't know if I can totally agree with that one. I think that's a pretty fair one. That's pretty fair. Fair enough. Oh, so you're saying you think it's going to be like 5 million at launch. That's quite the hot take. If you're right, we will remember you, Steak MCC. Luckily, my Nightbot saves my logs. We will remember the god that you are if you're right. I kind of agree with lessons learned. I don't even know if we'll know how classic it will be. You guys ready for one of my hot takes? What a perfect time to use one. In my opinion, if Classic WoW stays Classic WoW, it's going to be boring within a year. That's my hot take. If they don't change any of the balancing and they keep WoW Classic, I think people will get bored of it within a year. That's my hot take. I don't think it'll last longer than 9-10 months of playing. I think once people kind of get that initial nostalgia glasses, once they take those glasses off, or once they get a little bit bored of kind of the nature of the game at that time, or some of the balance issues that plague that game at that time, they're gonna realize this isn't as fun as I remember. But what I don't think Blizzard cares. At that point, like, I feel like Blizzard already made their money, especially if they make you pay a sub fee in order to play Classic WoW, which they likely will. And who knows, they might even make you charge a different one. They might even make you pay an extra $5 in order to play Classic WoW as well. We have no idea. They don't even know yet. When they announced the game, they weren't even ready to announce it yet. So they don't even have any clue yet. So that's my hot take. I think that Classic WoW, if it doesn't change any aspects about it, if it doesn't slowly implement new content, if it doesn't fix some of the balancing issues, maybe some of the gameplay issues, I think people will be bored of it within a year. And when I say people, I mean, when I say generalistic statements like that, I mean as a whole. I don't mean like, oh, there's 10,000 people playing it still, or there's 1,000 people playing it. I'm talking about, if we're talking about 1 million people, 5 million people, like somebody in chats, Steak MCC's MCC is a hot take, then I think that that population would drop by like 90% within a year. Easy. I saw another good one in chat that I wanted to address. I'm actually right there with you, Svinka, or Svinka. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. CVNKA. Svinka says, I thought Star Wars Galaxy's NGE was fun and got better than pre-CU by the time it was shut down. I'm with you, dude. I know everyone's gonna be like, but you made this great like Star Wars Galaxy's video and you talked about pre-CU. Yeah, people misinterpreted my video in a lot of different ways. First off, they thought that I was blanket saying that NGE was bad at times, or they thought that I was blanket saying that pre-CU was bad. I will go on record with you, Svinka, or Svinko, however I pronounce your name. I will go on record with you, and I will also say that I think that Star Wars Galaxies NGE near its shutdown was the best version of Star Wars Galaxies, pound for pound. I'm talking about flaws. I'm talking about like all the new content it added. I think it was a better game. Now, hear me out. I realize they killed a lot of great things that made Star Wars Galaxies great. They killed auction house, or sorry, they killed vendors. They killed a lot of community player interaction. But what you'll find is that NGE in itself didn't kill those things. It's just the process of time. After a while, those entertainers and doctors and cool trader roles, they started getting automated. People started botting. People started botting doctors. People started botting entertainers. You didn't need to actually interact with the community anymore. You could just do it automatically. You just type /follow/wave. He'd automatically look at you. He'd apply the buffs to you, and there was no problems. Not to mention, I will freely admit that although I thought NGE was better, I thought pre-CU just had way more flaws. So it's less that I thought NGE was better, and more that I just thought that pre-CU wasn't as great as everybody remembered it to be. Because although it had all these great nostalgia and community aspects to it, a lot of that kind of faded away after a while. And despite, contrary to popular belief, and I know I'm going to shock some people's worlds, Raph Koster, the main developer behind Star Wars Galaxies, said himself that he believed that the largest disruptions to the player count or population in Star Wars Galaxies actually happened before NGE. In his case, he believes that it was the changes to group experience, he believes that it was the changes to vendors, and he believes that it was the implementation of Jedi that were far greater issues than the NGE was. So if Raph Koster is going to make a statement like that, and he's the guy behind the game, I'm kind of going to be inclined to believe him.
Apathy is death. Apathy is death.
Thank you for following M4U13. What do you guys think, yay or nay, about including chat? What's your guys' thoughts about that? You see how I have chat over here? What's your guys' thought about that? Should I do that, do you think? Like this? Oh, wait, whoops. That's not what I had in mind at all. Browser source 2 is what it is. Remember that. Browser source 2. Should I put chat? Do you guys think it's cool if I put chat like that, or does it disrupt things? Could I make it smaller maybe? Yeah, exactly. Hi, YouTube. Everybody say hi to YouTube. You guys think chat's fine? I've got looks fine. Make it smaller. Is that size good enough for you guys right now? Smaller seems better. Hi, YouTube. You think that's nice? All right, awesome. Everybody just say hello. And by the way, if any of you say anything bad, you will instantly be banned. And when I say bad, I mean against the rules. So don't try and be the edgy guy who gets caught on YouTube. Because although you will also get banned. So, like, I know that's what Limpos is thinking about because he's a negative Nancy. And he likes to think about stuff like that. Any other hot takes, guys? We'll make it easier to follow the discussion on YouTube. I totally agree. Let me... my chat, I need to move it over just a tad. So, because some of you have really long names. Your hammer's ready? Yeah, exactly. Would help YouTube viewers get the context of conversations. I totally agree. I agree. Good idea. Glad we did that. Okay, so let me go back through some of the other hot takes here. Let's do a few more. I saw that Chris Avalon is overrated by Lessons Learned. You're going to have to qualify that one a bit more if I'm going to address it. I feel like that one's too clickbaity. Let's see, what else do we have here? I got to go further back. Do we have any more? Do you guys want to hit me with any more? SWOTOR be shut down within the next year. I don't know if that's a hot take. I mean, according to the SWOTOR community, it's a hot take. Okay, let's do one further. Let's do one further, Ludens. Let's not say within next year. Or maybe not one further. Let's take a little bit of a step back. I'm not going to say this year it's going to shut down. But what I will say... Or sorry, you mean within the next year. Within the next year? Okay. I think that's a pretty safe assessment. And the reason that I say that is that... although they're announcing new content and a new kind of like expansion, we've been over this in chat already. The new SWOTOR expansion, the SWOTOR expansion, is more of like a it's a polish session. They're promising to polish things that they should have polished years ago. Like man, I'm like sweating as hell in here. Look at this. You guys are killing me. No, my room doesn't have air conditioning, so I'm like dying in here. Look at that. And did you guys see the sub goal? I have a sub goal that says at 50, by the way, which is not a whole lot, that I'm supposed to be wearing a detective outfit. And I went to the local thrift store and thrift shop, and man, I'm gonna die in here. Like I'm gonna need to legit put an air conditioning in here. I'm not even kidding. I need to put an air conditioning through the window because I'm gonna like legit die of heat in here. Because I'm gonna be wearing like a 3-piece suit with a tie like up to here. If this goal gets readied or it passes, I'm going to die of sweat exhaustion. But that's for the viewers' enjoyment, am I right? And plus, you guys won't see the sweat stains because I'll be wearing a 3-piece suit. You might want to look into some ventilation. Yeah, this room doesn't have a fan, so I have to use my own fan. And as you guys know how fans work, fans don't blow cold air, they just blow air. Like, it's not actually cold air, so I need to get...
But you've got
thanks for subbing, the Odinson.
Cracking wise,
welcome to the
fight with my hands.
the Nor Club, right on stream. Appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys want me to sweat to death, stop by the podcast and use your Twitch Prime if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure we can get to 50 pretty quickly. I think within like 2 months we can get to 50. Or maybe better. Maybe I have low expectations of you guys. I think we can get to 50. But I already have the outfit picked out. It's sitting at the thrift store. It's ready for me to purchase. It's a large size. Nobody wears the size clothing that I wear. So, like, I might have to actually get it tailored. Because as you guys can see with this shirt even, I have quite broad shoulders. So it looks like my shoulders are trying to break out of my... So I might have to get it tailored a little bit so it can be a little bit looser and I can be somewhat comfortable.
But you've got the wrong guy.
Okay, now everyone's going to do this right now. Thank you, Rugby Time Express, for the sub. Welcome to the Nor Club. Another person who wants to see me sweat. If you're going to be sitting down, just don't wear the suit pants. That's a good point, Deuce. That's a good point. I think I'll oh, sorry. Twitch, I will be wearing the pants. I won't be wearing my underwear. Excuse me. But that'll be fun to see. I'm excited to wear the costume. I'm excited. I can't wait. I know, now we're at 12. Time to change that text, boy. Let's change that text. Wait, what? For some reason, it wasn't showing properly unless I put a space there. Yeah, we're at 12 now. All right, I think that's basically the end of the podcast, guys. I'm not going to hold you here any longer. This is probably where it will end on YouTube. So say goodbye to YouTube, everybody. This is the end of our 6 Pixels Under podcast. It was a little bit rough, as I said to everybody, and I realized we're going to be learning as we go. But I really just wanted to get this out. If you guys remember, I put out my video announcing this yesterday. So it's literally been on the wire. Like, everything has been last minute. We just got the transitions done like last week. The logo's been done for a while. So we've kind of kept that in under wraps. But hopefully next time my face won't be so broken out. So I won't look like Pinocchio, or I won't look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And I won't look like someone punched me in the eye. Which, by the way, I do get punched on a weekly basis as I do martial arts, but I don't always look like this. That's just a pimple. So don't think that I'm getting beat up. And also, I changed like the contrast in my camera, so the reds are a little bit brighter, but so are the blues. So I think my eyes look pretty, don't they? Isn't that the Clockwork Orange? Oh yeah, the theme for this week, guys: psychological thrillers. So don't remember what the theme is. You guys still got to turn that in. And the winner, once again, wins the mug. So, bye YouTube. Bye podcast. Now we can just maybe do a little bit more questions. You guys want to talk about a little bit more things before we leave? Pop it. Yeah, exactly, guys. If you want to know the truth, the man is holding me down. EA is beating me up in the back alleys. Just kidding, EA. Don't sue me. They're not really beating me up, for my opinions. What kind of martial arts? Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Calling that Card will win it. Card's already like flexing his muscle. He already has like 10 ideas lined up. Like he's ready to go. What is the answer to the life? Okay, yeah. So now I'll open up the I guess the forum to any kind of question. You guys can ask me anything now, like the AMA portion of the podcast. If we're still technically running the podcast, maybe we said goodbye too late, too soon. Oh, you don't actually? Okay, fair enough. You guys can ask me any questions now. So the first question that was asked to me is by Card, my mod. What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? I don't think any of us have that answer. I think we're always going to be searching for that answer. It's never going to be easy. The force is in all things. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I don't know if we'll ever know that answer. Life is like a constant reevaluation of yourself. I like to think about life like an Ouroboros tattoo. It's like it's constantly regrowing.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, thanks for the sub, PJab62699. Welcome to the Nor Club. Another man of culture wants to see me in a 3-piece suit. I appreciate that. What's your favorite anime? I would say my favorite anime. Man, that's hard. I would probably say it's between Cowboy Bebop and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I know are a little bit more mainstream anime. I don't watch a whole lot of anime. I'm very... Oh, no. Sorry. I forgot. My favorite anime is Detective Conan. And then Cowboy Bebop. And then Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I love Detective Conan. If you guys can't imagine the detective guy with all the detective shit on the wall liking Detective Conan, it's my favorite anime. So I recommend watching that if you haven't already. It's pretty good. How did you get the name Nerd Slayer? So, Nerd Slayer kind of started as a joke. So back when I first started playing Darkfall, I used to name myself Force Nerd Slayer. It's because my old gaming name used to be X-Force or Exiled Force. I was some edgy little teenager who I was exiled. Like, I'm not part of the nerds, but I'm not part of the jocks. That was always my thing. Cause like, I was like the fit athletic guy who was reading all class, who was sleeping all class if he couldn't read all class, who was skipping school to play games, who was playing his Game Boy in class. Like, that was me. Like, I was like the nerd and like the jock body. So I used to call myself X-Force to be an edgy preteen. And then I realized, I was like, it sounds kind of like silly. It sounds dorky. So I was like, I'll just like, to say that you're a force in something means something. So I was like, Force. And I was like, what should I make my last name? And I was like, Nerd Slayer sounds kind of cool for a PvP game, to be like Nerd Slayer, Force and Nerd Slayer. So I was like, I'll go with Force Nerd Slayer. But Nerd Slayer evolved to be more than that. I started calling myself Nerd Slayer because a lot of people who would talk to me would call me Force. And I didn't like the way that sounded. Force sounded weird as a name, as a gaming name. So I was like, I kind of wanted Nerd Slayer. I like when people called me Nerd or Nerd Slayer. And I actually do think it's funny when people call me Nerd. So people generally will call me Nerd as short. They'll say, hey, Nerd. But yeah, Nerd Slayer evolved into something more of like a meme as well, because it was like, for me, I had to join the nerds to slay the nerds. So it was part of the process of becoming the Nerd Slayer, is I had to embrace my title as a nerd. And also, if you guys can't imagine, I grew up playing MMOs, of course, as you guys realize, being fans of the channel. But I specifically like to play games like Dark Eden and Ultima, and I liked playing RuneScape, Darkfall, and what's another one? Those are probably the main ones. Those were, and Diablo 1. Those were all loot-based games. Like, you could kill somebody and get their loot. So Nerd Slayer became kind of like this identity of like being the guy who's good at killing nerds. So it's literally just that cheesy. And some people would ask me all the time. In fact, I've had brand ambassador people come to me and be like, I don't believe that Nerd Slayer fits with your brand. You should name yourself something different to fit the detective thing. Like, I've had people come to me and try and give me advice like that. And I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but this is gaming at the end of the day. You, me, like, and chat, Pin Zero Works, Dragion, Bic 4 Ito, like Deuce Cola, Doom Black Dragon, Drakendite, Limpos, Anbu. Like, we all have our own avatars, we all have our own names, we all have our own stories. So it makes sense that we name ourselves whatever we believe is a good name. Like, someone just popped up on chat, Fat for Larry. That's his name. Maybe he likes that name. Whatever else, right? We all have our own story and journey, and all of our own avatars and screen names. We've evolved at them and arrived at those names based on our own journey. And for me, Nerd Slayer was mostly comical, but now it's kind of become this thing where it's just like, well, I like the way Nerd Slayer looks when you have nerd with a capital S, and then Slayer. It looks cool, it's funny, it's dorky. People won't take me too seriously. They shouldn't take me too seriously. If I named myself like NS, N.S, which, by the way, I could do that. It's actually kind of a good idea, but I could do that. But then it makes me start to think that people are going to be a little bit on the nose about things, on my red nose about things, right? They're going to think things are too serious. And a lot of my old Death of a Game videos were too serious. They're too, like, depressing. There's not enough, like, excitement and good transitions and fun. Like, we have to talk about the fun aspects. And the channel, if we're going to talk about these dying games, these dying stories, these dying universes, it's depressing inherently. So, like, I don't want people to be like, oh, here comes the guy who's like the detective guy who just talks about all this depressing shit. I also wanted there to be some level of like, Nerd Slayer, what does that mean? Or Nerd Slayer is like dorky, or ha ha ha, Nerd Slayer. So that's how it came up. You still like the old videos? Well, I'm glad, even though I don't like them. I hate on my old videos because, like, the content is still good, even if it's not, like, communicated in the best way. But the problem for me is just, like, The editing, I didn't have Tom back then. My vocal quality is really bad. It's depressing, man, for me to listen to my old videos. I can't even do it, man. Like, I try and I'm watching and I'm like, switch that shit off pretty quickly. You like my old videos layout? Well, usually the more kind of the more analytical people, or the people who appreciate scientific studies or thesis, or what's the other word that Tom used to always use this word to describe my videos? He said they were like a what's the word that he used? Dang it, I can't remember. It's where a scientist or somebody who's trying to prove a scientific like theory will have like a speech or a case, or sorry, a study in which they'll try and present their case. I'm trying to remember what the name of this word is. Gotta go now. See you later, Savinka. Thanks for stopping by. To be honest, with how many Death of a Game videos you have, Game Slayer would be more realistic. I never, like, just so you guys know, when I pick on games that are technically still alive, I'm not doing it to be like, oh, I'm saying it's now dead. Like, I'm just wanting to, first off, open up the discussion, but second off, I'm outlining all of these other reasons around it as to why it's dead either idealistically or literally. So if I only ever handled games that were literally dead, then my channel would not only be kind of just more like basic in execution, but it also, I wouldn't be able to talk about things in the same way that I can talk about them now. Which is like, once again, like I was saying earlier, things can be a commercial failure, right? But maybe artistically be a success, or artistically be a failure, or commercially be a success. It's multifaceted. It's not just like you're alive because your server's up, or you're dead because your server's down. If that was the only like depth of human thought that we had, we would be in a depressing state of affairs, especially from a literature perspective. I can't for the life of me remember what it is, but I'll ask my editor what the name of the word was. It's like basically, my old videos, Doom Black Dragon, I appreciate that you like them, but oh, dissertation. I cannot believe I couldn't remember what the name was. Dissertation is what I meant. So a dissertation is a long essay on a particular subject, and one that's typically written or a requirement for like a doctor of philosophy. So a dissertation is what I was thinking of. My old videos are like dissertations. They're these long essays where it's like, here is the hypothesis, here is the thesis, is the game dead, followed by all of the evidence, followed by my analysis of the evidence, aka the, you know, the abstract, or the abstract is like the breakdown of the argument, followed by the argument, and then you have the conclusion, which is like what the scientist, or in this case me, what my ideas are based on like looking at that knowledge. It makes a lot of sense. That's why I structured them that way, because analytically, that's how most people do them, right? But the reason why I transitioned away from doing that and doing that like as just a base model for my Death of a Game videos was that doesn't make for the most exciting video format, right? That type of format is made for essays. It's made for studies, things that are textually based, but it's not really made for videos. Videos need to be more snappy. The content needs to be snappier. It needs to have more transitions. It needs to be, you need to be able to have the deep details, but also show people the fun aspects, right? Maybe you have a fun transition, or you introduce a fun Twitch clip. There's a lot more that goes into YouTube videos these days than just being like, here is my argument, followed by the or here is my hypothesis, followed by the study, followed by my conclusion of the study. Like, if I make my videos only that kind of video, I'm not going to appeal to the wider audience that I could possibly appeal to, right? And that's very important. I don't want to just be the robot guy, because at the end of the day, Tom, my editor, he's the video guy. He understands videography. He understands editing videos. He knows what makes things exciting. Have you guys ever seen Did You Know Gaming? They have short, small, contained videos that are snappy, that you get all the information that you need within like 10 minutes, and it's pretty awesome. That's not to say that I'm going to shoot for 10-minute below videos. Ultimately, my videos don't have a requirement in terms of how long I make them. I just make them however long I need to make them in order to tell the story properly. But I hope I made sense. Like I had to get away from being overly analytical and try and focus more on being snappier. And when I say snappier, the biggest change that I've done in my videos, as you guys can probably figure out, is that at the end, I used to say what my thoughts were at the very, very end of the video. Unfortunately, majority of people don't even watch that part of the video, because the majority of people don't watch the end of the videos, period. Like, if your average view duration, like mine is like 60% or 58% or whatever it is, the majority of people who watch my videos aren't going to watch that. So it's much better that I can hook the person earlier in the video. And the only way that I can do that is by sprinkling in my analysis as the story unfolds, right? Because it reduces a lot of redundancies. And this is why, again, this is not made for a video format. Such a video is not made for a video format. Not really. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, there's dissertation guys like Joseph Anderson and Reykjavik and what's a couple more of those people? There's Joseph. What's that other guy that did the Fallout videos? I can't remember his name. Point being is that those 2-hour videos, that's a particular kind of audience, and I can guarantee that the views that you see on a Joseph Anderson video, likely less than like a third of them have watched the whole video, because it's just so long. It's a lot to ask for somebody to watch 2 hours of a video. And so I'm trying to get away from being like, here's a good example I can mention to you guys. In my Hellgate London video, I had people accuse me of repeating some of the same things. And I totally agree with that criticism. It was a very fair criticism. But here's the problem with the criticism. The problem is that, unfortunately, based on the format that I had created, I had no other way to do it. I had to say, hey guys, you remember that one point that I made? So I could remind everybody what the point was, and then I could react to it, right? And if you guys realize, that creates a lot of redundancies, because I have to constantly be like, hey guys, remember the video? Hey guys, remember this part? Hey, remember the, like, it gets old after a while, and people are like, why are you repeating the same thing? It's like, well, you kind of have to establish the premise so I can then give the analysis, right? Otherwise, people are like, kind of, what are you responding to exactly? Like, they have to piece it together on their own. And I know people probably like Doom Black Dragon are just fine with that. They'll put the pieces together, just like I would, right? If I watch a video, I'll just put the pieces together. It's not a big deal. But for an actual, someone who maybe isn't willing to do that, or the average like YouTube viewer, they're going to want to hear the analysis immediately. So when I say, oh, they decided to launch the game as a free-to-play game, I need to talk about why or what a potential reason or potential like negative that could cause, right? I have to talk about it immediately in terms of the timeline. If I wait until the very, very end, it creates redundancies. So I hope I'm making sense, but that's basically the reason why I changed the format of my videos. Again, don't get me wrong, there's going to be plenty of time to do the super long form videos. I have tons of ideas to do videos of that nature, but those videos are way more ambitious, and thus those ambitious videos take a lot more resources. So I'm not really ready to start doing those videos yet. I've mentioned before offhand, but the first one that I really want to do in that regards is a video on Electronic Arts and talking about the real company that they actually are, behind closed doors, right? It's a juicy story. It's a great story to do a dissertation on, but it's also one that I just don't have the time or resources. And when I say resources, I'll be frank with you guys. I always have been frank with you guys. It's money, right? Like I hope you guys don't think that I make a lot of money off of YouTube. I make probably a third less than I used to make at my old job. And I'm saying, like, when I make the best amount of money that I can make on YouTube, I'm still making less than I was making before. So when I can get to the point to where my finances can be in a better position, that's what's going to allow me to do longer videos as well as more videos, because at that point I can hire Tom to work for me full time, which means that we can put out every single video is fully edited, which means that we can do a lot more content. So I don't just say this shit. I'm not one of those YouTubers who's like, if you sub or give me this amount of money, I'm gonna do it. I'm like being serious. Like, I can be completely transparent with you guys and say, like, these are the reasons why I can't just create the new series that I want to create already. I can't, because I just don't have the ability to do that. I'm not the greatest editor. You guys have seen my videos, the first ones or some of the editorials. I edit those myself, and as you can tell, they're very minimalistic in terms of editing. They're not really what I have in mind for the very ambitious types of videos that I want to make. I need my editor for those things. And unfortunately, he works a full-time job as well. So as I and the Nerd Slayer and the channel starts to grow, that's what's going to allow me to have an editor full-time. So, I mean, that's just the type of shit that you can expect. And I'm going to make a video this year, near the end of the year, that's going to be an advertisement video. And when I say advertisement, I just mean it's going to be it's going to be a funding push towards getting more Patreon supporters. But I'm going to do it, first off, in a funny, entertaining way. It's going to be based in character. I'm going to be playing my Nerd Slayer character, or sorry, NS. The name of the detective is NS. It's not Nerd Slayer. I'm Nerd Slayer. NS is the character. I'm going to be playing him in skits. We're going to have a bunch of funny skits. We're going to go to bars. We're going to go to live events. We're going to ask people questions. It's going to be really funny and humorous. And that video is going to be essentially kind of like my, manifesto. It's going to just list everything that we have planned for the channel. It's going to show all of the goals, all of the possible ideas, all of the new series that we want to implement, what the extent that we want to take the channel is, how we want to do more featurettes, for example. That's one thing we haven't even talked about at all. I shouldn't even be talking about it, to be honest, but we want to do featurettes for games. We want games to contact us and be like, hey, can you do a featurette on our game? Like, that's the type of stuff that we want to get involved in. Real journalism. But again, we're getting there, right? It's fine. We gotta walk before we gotta crawl before we can walk, and we gotta walk before we can run. So that video will release near the end of the year, and I promise it'll be entertaining, because I realize people don't really like when things are just advertisements, and I would never do that to you guys. So I think that's probably a good time to start the podcast, huh? At this point. What did I miss in chat? Rome wasn't built in one day. Exactly. But I did see someone say something along the lines of like, oh, I fear about your channel and your content. Have no, like, guys, if you just saw the Elon Musk interview where he's on Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan asked him, like, how do you manage to do all of this? He's like, I never have a shortage of ideas. It's the exact same for me. I've shown you guys my ideas before, sometimes on accident, but I have tons of ideas, right? Like, the ideas aren't the problem. We have tons of ideas for new videos and new content. It's resources, it's time, right? And when you're like me, unfortunately right now, forced in a position to put out a certain amount of videos a month in order to make enough money to live, I can't be thinking about what's planned down the line, right? I can't be thinking about the new series that I'm going to unveil that's going to talk about single player games. I can't talk about that yet because I don't even have it fully realized yet. Or I can't even talk about the idea that we have for the end of the year. We're going to do a live Mafia. Like, we're going to fully produce a live Mafia. Like Geek and Sundry does their Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to do our version of that, and we're going to do our version in a Mafia game. So we have so many things planned that you guys don't even know about yet. We have to check. Limpos, you did come. Limpos, by the way, is going to get full credit for the name. He came up with 6 Pixels Under. I think he said 6 Pixels Deep first, and then said 6 Pixels Under. So he came up with the idea. Where's the Patreon link at? Oh, I don't know if I put it on my channel. Sorry, I don't know if I even have it on my actual channel. That's probably something I should do, huh? It's probably, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Man, I'm so surprised I haven't even put my, yeah, I'll have to change that. But someone probably already linked it before I said anything. Nope, they didn't. You guys are too slow right now. There you go. Yeah, everyone give Limp Boss a good job. When I say guns, I'm asking, like, guns or D&D? Oh, oh no, not 1920 Mafia theme. Sorry, I'm the Russian guy. The Russian psychologist who invented the Mafia game. It's a social deduction game. I'm going to essentially... Nerd, do you know where my semi-auto pistol and rest went? I have no idea, actually. Sorry, man. It's going to be the social deduction game. And when I say, think about Geek and Sundry. So Geek and Sundry does something where they invite like celebrities or voice actors, and they do campaigns live on Twitch and then upload them to YouTube. My idea for Mafia is the exact same thing. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to take the Mafia game, the social deduction game. I'm going to make it exciting, make it have an exciting format. Then we're going to film it live, right? And hopefully at some point we can start to invite streamers and people that are more popular to play the game. And then we might even have a circuit kind of thing. That's kind of what we're searching for. Yeah, Critical Role, exactly. So this Mafia idea is basically Critical Role except Mafia. And luckily, I have people like my editor helping me edit. I have my best friend who actually runs the Rustfall server, Adun, which is what Jorth was talking about. There is no semi-auto pistol. It's all... We're trying to keep it medieval themed or fantasy themed as well. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be that kind of thing. He's going to shoot it atmospherically. It's going to be like when you watch poker live, that's what we're trying to shoot for in a live setting. Because we think that Mafia hasn't truly been captured the right way it should be captured. Black and white is a very big possibility. Because once again, we're trying to go after the idea of fitting that like immersion. Like when someone's a bad guy, we want you as the viewer to really feel that based on the tension, based on the way it's shot, based on the way that it's presented. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're trying to go for. And I won't talk about it anymore because we haven't even figured out everything about it yet. But we're working on it. King Arthur and his 25 Italian mobsters. Yeah, exactly. We don't even know what type of rules we're going to have yet. And we don't even know if we want to do blind Mafia or public Mafia, where all the viewers know who the guys are or not. We might do both. There's so many things that go into it. But the cool thing is, and I'll leave you guys on this, or I'll leave you guys with this. Yeah, live action LARPing. And like what we're really trying to do with it is have people treat it as seriously as they can. And I don't mean don't have fun. I mean like actually try and win the game. So different personalities mixing together on camera, on film, being recorded. All of that's going to be very unique and very emergent kind of gameplay. So not that kind of black and white. But what was the last thing? Oh, the other thing, and I'll leave you guys with this one, is that we plan on doing these at events, like live events. Like we're going to be at PAX Unplugged. We're gonna go to PAX Prime and PAX East and RTX Rooster Teeth Austin, PAX South, other tabletop events that I can possibly think of. Maybe even Dragon Cons, that kind of thing. Like we want to take this to actual events and have our own actual like rooms where we can set this all up, and maybe even our own booth. So this is the ultimate goal. Oh, nice. I will see you at PAX South then. That'll be cool. Maybe you can come play with us, Doom Black Dragon, because we will definitely have a Mafia game set up every single day. Every event, we're gonna set up an event or multiple events every day. These are gonna be live streamed. These are gonna be uploaded on YouTube, and I can meet all of you guys. You can come play. Like ultimately, the beginning players for the game are probably just gonna be you guys. They're gonna be our community, people who are very interested, and we're gonna have to hand out flyers and promise free food and that kind of thing, and get our name out there to hope people will show up and play. But in the future, we're gonna have good players. We're gonna have players who are established personalities. When I say good players, sorry, I don't mean like a great player per se in terms of the mechanics of the game. I just mean fun to watch good player, right? Because good player can mean many things in a social game. The person who keeps things exciting is a good player. You want that player on your team. You want that player in the game because everyone wants to watch that player. So as personalities develop as we can start to get bigger and reach out to maybe other streamers, other YouTubers, that kind of thing, it's going to be sweet. That's all I'm going to say. I'm leaving it as that. As you can see, I get hype on it. It makes me so excited. I'm sweating in here. My face is getting redder and redder because I'm getting hot in here. MLG Mafia. Hey, we might design a circuit with prizes. I'm not kidding, guys. This is all real shit. Like a circuit. We're going to give away shit. Like, it's going to be fucking awesome, okay? But I think that's a good time to leave you guys. I really want to thank everybody for stopping by today. I think we got up to as much as like 40-something viewers today for our first run of the podcast. That's awesome. I'm so excited about that. I was a little bit nervous. I was stumbling over my words a little bit. You guys could probably tell, but I typically do that anyway. It doesn't help that I just woke up like an hour before, so I didn't have a lot of time to kind of like warm up the mouth, if you will. But this is going to be every single week. Pop This is going to be every week, 12 p.m. Eastern on Mondays, and then we're going to upload it to YouTube as well. So if you can't see it live, you can always watch the VOD again, but the best place to watch it after is going to be on YouTube. So hopefully you guys will be my regulars, like you 40, you 33 guys right now will be my regulars, so we can always have you. You guys always keep chat interesting and keep it flowing. And now that we can put chat on screen, this is an even more awesome way to keep the audience engaged with YouTube as well. And next week we might have a guest. I might try and reach out to a couple people to get a guest on here. One more thing for you guys, like a question. For the guest portion, should I try and keep the guest on for the entirety of the segments? Like the whole podcast? Or maybe get rid of them after like the first 45 minutes? Like, I guess it depends on the guest ultimately, but I'm just wondering, because the guest segments are going to be longer, so the podcast will probably be like 20-30 minutes longer. Well, it's already pretty long today because we went off after the podcast, but the podcast I'm going to shoot for about 2.5 hours, so I'm probably, like Card said, I'm probably going to shoot to try for both, and it does depend on the guest, ultimately, because some guests aren't going to know things about certain topics that we're talking about, but we're going to try and involve the guests as much as we possibly can and keep it exciting. Because I'm not one of those people. I hate the majority of podcasts. To be completely honest with you guys, I hate the majority of people's podcasts. The only problem with Indigo, PJab, by the way, is he works. So he's going to have to get work off. Thank you for following Farrowin 2014. So Indigo is 2BD. But yeah, like I think majority of podcasts, they don't do such a good job of involving the guests. Or in having enough structure to keep the podcast fun. Like, you need to have a little bit of structure, otherwise the podcast just kind of goes all over the place and it just ends up being just like two, like, you know, conversations, really. And sometimes we might have a guest on who disagrees with me, right? And we might debate things. Or sometimes we might have a guest on who doesn't even play MMORPGs, right? And so, like, the topics are going to change. So ultimately, it's just going to be about gaming. The podcast is going to be about gaming, but obviously, I like to focus and talk about MMOs in specific fashion, just because I feel like that's kind of what my thing is, especially it's the thing I know the most. I mean, Super Eye Patch Wolf does it well. I'll look him up. I'm gonna save that name. MMO Bomb is a good podcast. They gave you a shout out 2 weeks ago. Oh, that's cool. Thank you, MMO Bomb, for shouting me out on your podcast. Yeah, maybe we can link up and do like a co-podcast or something at some point. A lot of podcasts just runs off and derails. I totally agree. And that's why, like, I know I derailed a little bit today, but the idea is not to constrain myself by structure. It's to allow myself to breathe with structure. Now I can think about, okay, now I have this to talk about. Now I have this to talk about. Now we can move to these topics, and make sure to cover all of the cool topics, as well as me get used to looking at the camera. So that's another thing I need to get used to. But we don't want to constrain creativity. We just want it to kind of even out after a while. Oh, and the other thing too is for that last section, for the hot take section, once I get somebody who can assist me in making these podcasts, because by the way, if any of you are interested, I need somebody to help me keep a stopwatch on me to make sure I'm not going too much over certain segments, and also somebody to pick questions and possibly pull people in on Discord, because ultimately I want you guys to call in. I don't want you guys to ask questions. Like, I want you guys to say the question, because that's what's really going to help us, me being the podcaster and you, the podcastee or whatever you want to call it, the viewer, right? The consumer. That's what's going to make you feel the most connected to me, is if you can actually call in to the show and talk. So we're working on that, but I just need somebody to help me in the meantime, because I need someone for sure to do such a thing, because I can't do all of that at the same time. It's just too much. I can't watch how long I've been going, watch what the topics are, discuss the points, and read the chat. I can't do it all at the same time. You like it when I go overtime? Hey, Adon, thanks for stopping by the way. Nerd starting the indoctrination part of his cult. No, that's just the indoctrination part of the Mass Effect 3 game. We've all been indoctrinated. We have managed to keep him on several hours longer than he planned on multiple levels. You guys typically do. You are pretty good at derailing me, but honestly, it's because I talk about this all the time, and this is probably a good way to end the stream, which I keep saying, by the way. But I find that I have imposter syndrome in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to streaming. I'm always wondering, like, why would someone want to watch me stream? Why would they watch me stream? Like, sure, I can talk about MMOs every now and then, but what about when I'm not? Like, I always kind of had that hard time understanding stream culture. I still have a hard time understanding stream culture, just to be completely honest. That's why I really wanted to do the podcast, because it feels like I'm still doing something that's like guided, but it's also streaming. So it's like, I've been learning, and I still think sometimes I'm just like, why are these people watching me talk about this shit? But you guys I've had 30 people watching me like literally talk about, what were we talking about that one time? Like, we were just talking about the most random shit ever. And it was so fun and interactive, and everyone had a good time. But I remember just looking back and being like, what? Like, what? That was so weird. But I'm trying to suspend my disbelief, and I'm getting over it as I grow as a person, but also as a content creator. So we're working on it. Just be yourself. I'll try, Farrowin. I'll try. But yeah, if any of you guys are interested in helping me, a volunteer, Jamie. Yeah, exactly. Just send me a message on Discord. That's the best place to reach me. Like, the best place to reach me is on Discord. So just send me messages on Discord. I always respond to every message. Emails are pretty good as well, but save the emails for when you have like kind of long things or long form things that you want to talk about.
Apathy.
But otherwise,
death.
yeah.
Apathy is death.
Thank you for stopping by and watching my stream. Thank you for watching the 6 Pixels Under podcast. We're going to make it big. We're going to put it everywhere. It's going to be on every platform. They're not going to be able to get enough of us. And even if they can't get enough of us and they hate us, they're going to have to listen to us. They're going to have to respect us eventually. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you for stopping by on this Monday afternoon now. Probably nighttime for you EU fans. Thank you for stopping by, EU fans. I know it's like a weird time over there. I tried to make it like a middle ground time where it's like lunchtime for work. People in work in America, and then it's like not totally nighttime in Europe. So I think I've gotten the best of both worlds. And 9:30 p.m. Yeah, it's getting lunchtime over there. That's good. I'm glad you guys are saying it's pretty good, because I felt like it was a pretty fair time, especially if it ran like 2 or 3 hours. It'd be a good enough time. Thank you for following, Big Forito.
Apathy is death.
I'm glad it works for you as well. I ate Sarlacc. That's a good name. Anyway, I'm saying goodbye for real this time. It's been fun. I can't wait to see you guys on Saturday for MMO Lab, and then I'll see you guys Monday again. I don't know what MMO Lab's going to be this week. I still have to figure that out. But we're going to have 2 videos uploaded this week by Monday. So we'll have another Death of a Game, and we'll have a video about combat systems in MMORPGs, and then we'll have an MMO Lab on Saturday. So we're never going to decrease the work. It's only going to increase. So we're working on it. We're going to get you guys more content. And just hold tight. But yeah, anyway, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching me. I'm out for real. Peace.